are going down. So yes, I mean, obviously for all British families, that is good news. Other good news on the horizon is inflation should start coming down below 10%. And obviously what the Tories are banking on for the next election is people actually feeling better off. And if they don't feel better off, then certainly the Tories are absolute toast.
OK, Nigel Nelson, really good to have you with us this morning. Thank you so much. Let us know what you make of that story. Energy bills coming down. We're sure you're welcoming that news this morning. Very positive. It's still a lot higher than it was just a few years ago. It's still a lot of money for people monthly, isn't it? Do let us know what you make of that story, or indeed Rishi Sunak at the G7. Is it worth his time? Does it make a difference to you seeing him on the world stage, meeting with people like Emmanuel Macron? Let us know. GBNews at gbnews.uk.
Yeah, it seems to me that every time we go to an international conference, we give billions of pounds away to overseas nations, and we could really do with that money back home. Call me a cynic.
I think lots of people will agree with you. Yeah. Let's bring you up to date with other stories that are taking place today. And figures obtained by the Labour Party suggest there's been a big jump in the number of people dying in A&E. Data provided by NHS Trust shows that more than 23,000 people died in emergency departments last year. That's 22% more than the year before.
And head teachers are warning that artificial intelligence is moving far too quickly for the government alone to provide the advice that is needed. In a letter to The Times signed by more than 60 school leaders, they ask for guidance on the best way going forward. Their comments come after the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said guardrails will be put in place to maximise the benefits of AI whilst minimising the risks to society.
The Ministry of Defence has awarded contracts worth £320 million to service Royal Navy offshore patrol vessels. UK Docks Marine Services in the North East has been given a contract worth £250 million to support vessels, including HMS Tamar. That's expected to create around 100 jobs. A second contract worth £70 million has gone to BAE Systems in Portsmouth. We've been talking about seagulls this morning because there's a great story in the Daily Mail today about why you should hide your chips from southern seagulls. They're the most likely, apparently, to pinch your chips and your ice cream. So those on the south coast are the least timid birds. Those in the Shetland Islands are most likely to stay well clear of you. I wonder what that's about.
Well, I wonder if it's just the amount of food, the amount of booty on display, as it were. Loads of people down on the south with all their chips on display, they're adapting. Or is it that people up north are made of sterner stuff and they fight back? They give the seagull a biff on its beak.
Biff on its beak. Let us know if you've had an altercation with a seagull. What did they pinch from you and how did you react? How did you deal with it? Let us know. GBNews at gbnews.uk. Indeed, lots more people could be heading down to the coast, couldn't they, with some lovely weather coming our way.
Yeah, that's right, because a lot of people complain about global warming, but actually, in this sense, I'm a big fan. 35 degrees centigrade African plume to hit the UK as early as this weekend and into next week. Ellie, fantastic news for those wanting to finally shake off what has been, I think, a long, grey and damp winter. It
has been. I feel like we've had a false start to summer a few times, haven't we? I know we're only in May still.
Yeah.
But it'll be nice to have some hot weather.
If you remember during
very often.
Do you remember during the first lockdown, like April and May, were like this amazing tropical...
Beautiful, wasn't it?
This year's been miserable.
It really has. It really has. So let's hope we can get some sunshine on our skin this week. How long does it say it's going to last for?
It says
an extended period.
Could be as long as 2 weeks, although they normally get the weather wrong the day before. So let's just hope, finally, we're going to get some sunshine on our backs.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And we've also got a story in the Daily Express this morning which shows a popularity boost for King Charles and the Prince of Wales. William, there's a great picture of him here in the Daily Express. Apparently, King Charles III's popularity, he's sitting at 63% in a poll, and the Prince of Wales is at 73% popularity. So Prince of Wales is more popular than his father.
Yeah.
Must be said. Which way should I be doing this? Like that.
And I think at the...
But apparently this boost has happened since the coronation.
Yeah, there's no surprise there because the royals who acted with dignity and regality are bouncing up, and of course right down languish at the bottom are the Sussexes. Oh. And this poll was taken before their paparazzi chase, which sounds a bit of a Hollywood movie in itself, that version of events in New York. So yeah, the ones who are doing the job properly are getting the recognition they thoroughly deserve. Yes,
and I think the coronation really did show the very best of us, didn't it? And the very best of our royal family. So perhaps no surprise that we have seen that boost in popularity. Have you felt that at home? Did you feel that swelling of pride when you watched the coronation? Do let us know. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
OK, and counting is coming to an end today for Northern Ireland's local elections. Almost half of the seats are filled, and so far, only 200 out of 462 councillors have been elected.
Well, Sinn Féin has made a strong start and remains on course to become the largest party in local government, with 93 councillors elected.
Our Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie joins us now. Doogie, so are we looking at a big change, a swing towards Sinn Féin? And what does that mean for the DUP? And more importantly, what does it mean for the union?
Well, good morning. Welcome to Bangor. Bangor Leisureplex here. The count will be starting here in about an hour and a half's time. And yes, Sinn Féin have made a good start to this, but you've got to remember this is a PR election. So this is proportional representation. So it's all about the transfers and management of vote. Sinn Féin do that extremely well. They have their electorate trained to go 1-2 in certain areas, and then with the same candidates 2-1 in other areas. And that's how it works. The votes transfer. As one gets in, you carry on another one with you. So yesterday will have been the main ones in will have been mainly the ones that were only standing one candidate in an area and didn't have to worry about bringing someone else with them. But where Sinn Féin really excel at this is so the likes of Lisburn North yesterday, their candidate came in over the quota. So the next time round in 4 years, they will probably run 2 there because they reckon if they manage the vote right, they just have to stay ahead of the last man standing. I mean, yesterday I was talking about Pat Catney, a businessman, very well respected inside council areas, because it's very hard to get people from the business community actually into councillors. And that's really what councils need to run places like this. Someone from the private sector that knows exactly how that all operates rather than just the public sector. And we thought he was toast. And his transfers came from obviously personal people liking him as a character. So the vote didn't go that way. So at this moment in time, if you look at these votes transferring, Alliance, SDLP and Sinn Féin seem to transfer through one another. Pat made it in, and we never thought that he was going to get transfers from anywhere. So really, what does it mean for Northern Ireland? Not a lot till about 3 o'clock till we see the results come out. It'll be much tighter than what we're seeing here at the moment. Does it matter if Sinn Féin tops the polls here? No, because the Good Friday Agreement is shared with nationalism and unionism still refuses to go in because of the framework document and the protocol. Until Chris Heaton sorts that out, it'll be down to local councils to run Northern Ireland because, of course, Stormont isn't up and running yet.
OK, Doogie Beattie, thank you for that crucial update. And there's a lot at play here, Ali, a lot at play. We saw Rishi Sunak more or less washing away the DUP, saying we don't need them in terms of on alliance. It's a huge shift since 2017 for those of us who went to Brussels and fought for the integrity and the future of the union. It really, really is a day to watch.
Yeah, it certainly is. And the counting is slow. There have been certain strikes and issues going on in Northern Ireland. That's why it's so delayed, these results. But as Doogie just said there, hopefully from about 3 p.m. today, we start to get a clearer picture of the results. And, of course, we will bring that to you on GB News. Now, still to come, and you are going to want to watch this because you're going to have an opinion. We're going to debate whether it's time to bring an end to pocket money. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. You are watching and listening to Breakfast with Ellie and Martin. Still lots to come on the programme.
Yeah, and reports are suggesting that the new summer price cap could reduce energy bills by up to £450 a year. Hurrah! We'll see if good news is really on the horizon at 8 o'clock. And here's a great one that I'm involved in. The relegation battle continues this weekend in the Premier League. Come on, Forest. Aidan McGee has all the drama at 8:20.
Couldn't resist, could you? Little tease to Nottingham Forest. Well, remember, you can get in touch on any of the stories that we're talking about today, whether it's seagulls, whether it's King Charles and the boost in popularity after the coronation, whether it's how you're feeling about this African plume.
Yeah.
Wonderful weather coming our way this week. Do get in touch with us today, gbnews@gbnews.uk.
Now, wakey, time for a very feisty debate, because while millions of parents are battling for pay rises that keep up with the cost of living, should we still be giving our children pocket money?
Well, you're all going to have opinion on this one, I'm sure. Journalist Julie Cook is in favour of pocket money and doesn't believe in making her kids work for that money. But broadcaster Mike Parry believes that children should have to work for their money to install a working mentality.
Well, we're joined now by Julie and Mike to discuss more on what is the best way to provide with your children. Julie, let's start with you. So you're in favour of a fair wage for what? For a fair day's work, or just giving money willy-nilly to kids for the sake of it? And how much is the right amount?
I don't think you should make your children work. I think, you know, you've brought children into the world, into your safe family haven, and that the world is a scary enough place in future anyway, where children are going to have to learn pretty quick about money. So I think while they're young, you should give them pocket money. And I don't make mine work for it. I think, you know, I as I say, brought them into this world. I should pay for them. And so I give my son around £15 to £20 a week. My daughter is 9 and she doesn't get pocket money yet because she's still quite young. So, yeah, I don't see the problem with pocket money.
OK, Mike, you brought children into this world and you should pay for them. That's what Julie says. What do you make of that?
Well, I looked at the figures last night. I did a lot of research on it. And the most horrifying figure I found was that 21% of teenagers still expect to receive pocket money from their parents when they're 18 years of age. Now, that is a national disgrace. If you're not standing on your own 2 feet by the time you're 18, you have got a very, very unhappy life ahead of you. I started standing on my own 2 feet when I was 8 years of age, OK? I used to go to jumble sales in the local village hall and buy second-hand clothing and then go and sell it to a second-hand clothes dealer. And I made a lot of money and I put it in a little metal tin under my bed. And when my mum found it eventually, she thought I'd stolen it. And I said, no, I'm just a budding entrepreneur, although I didn't know what the word entrepreneur meant in those days. But my point is that since a very early age, I've wanted to be self-sufficient. I was helping the milkman when I was 8 years of age. By 13, I had a regular paper round every morning. I got up at 5 o'clock and did that before I went to school. That gave me a sense of independence. It gave me a sense of self-worth. And also, and I'm sorry to have to tell Julie this, it made me much more independent of my parents than kids who've constantly got their hand out to their parents to give them money. So if I came home from school with a bad report, what my old fella used to say was, that's it, you're not getting any pocket money this week. I used to turn around to him and say, stuff your pocket money, mate. I'm going out doing the milk round on Saturday. It gives you that sense of self-worth. I've looked at some of the figures. 5 to 10 years of age, kids get £6.40. 10 to 13, they get £11.20. That's OK, up to 13. But after that, cut it off. Every child after the age of 13 should have some sort of job. Go and pick fruit in the fields. There's plenty of that needed in this country. Or get yourself a Saturday job. Or just get yourself something to do to introduce you to the world of effort and reward.
OK, Julie, you've been biding your time very patiently there. Mike was one step away from saying he used to be a chimney sweep when he was 4 years of age. Julie, over to you. Do you think that's a fair thing to say, that you're encouraging mollycoddling, you're encouraging dependency, and what kids need actually is stand on their own 2 feet?
Do you know, despite this being a debate, I can really identify with everything Mike has just said, because I was that child. And I think this is why I mollycoddle. When I was young, my financial situation was very different to my children's today. My parents didn't have a lot of money. When I was 13, I got a paper round. When I was 15, I worked in a bakery. When I was 16, I worked in a supermarket. When I was 18, I was a waitress. So I worked, just like Mike, from being 13. But when I had my own children, because I found that not difficult, it was just the life, but I wanted different for them. I wanted to give them what I didn't have. I wanted to give them yes, you can have that ice cream. Yes, you can go and buy that pair of trousers instead of no, which is what I heard a lot. Not through any fault of my parents. There just wasn't a lot of money around when I was young. So I think that's perhaps it. Perhaps I'm sort of subconsciously trying to make up for what I didn't have, perhaps. But I don't think it means they won't be able to stand on their own 2 feet. We talk about money, we talk about budgeting. They come around with me when I do the shop and I say, look for the cheapest thing, so they're learning about money from me. But I just think while they're young, they should be supported a little bit, because you've got a lot of time on your own 2 feet afterwards.
And Mike, don't you think that there's a point to be made for the cost of living crisis as well? I mean, it is difficult, isn't it, for kids, if they do want to go out and socialise, if they want to do things, they're not yet old enough to work, that they are probably going to need a little bit of a helping hand.
Well, Ellie, I would say it's even more important now that parents teach their children the value of independence, because if every time a crisis comes along in life, you don't worry about it as a teenager because you know your parents will cushion you from it. Surely that's not a good way to start going through life, is it? Oh, it doesn't matter. Mum and dad will sort that out for me. The bank of mum and dad, the taxi service of mum and dad, the mum and dad. I mean, what my mum used to do, by the way, sometimes if I wanted to go out on a Saturday night and I'd run out of the money that I had, she'd go up and get £10 out of the envelope that paid the gas bill. But I had to give it her back by Wednesday after I got my money from my paper round, you see. What I would say is this is a very serious point. Julie, laid it out brilliantly as a parent and, the balance of responsibility and all that. But I do have a friend who did very well in life, lived in a big house, and who now regrets the fact that the son he had was still dependent on his parents at the age of 25. Even after going through university, coming out, going on a gap year, and then going back and doing a master's. And my mate is now actually regretting having financed, that child, fully financed that child right the way through to the age of 25, because the son concerned is now incapable of standing on his own 2 feet. And my mate admits we were just too generous to him all the way through his life.
OK, Mike, Julie, we've got to leave it there, I'm afraid, but a fantastic debate. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I don't know where I sit with this.
Well,
what do you think? You're a dad.
Yeah, I've got a 14-year-old lad and a 9-year-old girl. I don't give either of them pocket money.
Do you not?
No, and
Nothing?
No, I don't. And it's not because I'm being tight. It's because I buy them what they need.
Yeah.
So they get video game, they get treats. They are spoiled. But I don't give them money into their own hands because I don't give them money for chores, because I think children should do chores as a prerequisite of putting their weight within a house. I can't stand it when kids sit around doing nothing and expect everyone to do things for them. But you shouldn't pay them for that. They should do that naturally. Pull your weight. And I talk to my kids all the time about the value of money. I say to them, the best food is free food. The second best food is cheap food. I've got the gas app now. I said, look, you're turning that on, it's going up. Help me save money. I'm not going to give you money to spend.
Yeah, but if you put money in their hand, do you think that would help them to realise the value of money in terms of how much they could buy for themselves?
Well, my daughter just spends it all the time on anything, whereas my son is a real saver. So same genetic line, but they're completely different with money. But I think teach them to be tight.
OK. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Let us know what you think at home. You'll definitely have an opinion on this, whether it's with your kids or your grandkids. Should they receive pocket money? And if they do, should that just be because, or should it be because they've actually done some chores? Perhaps they've washed the car or something. Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Lots more to come on the programmes. Do stay with us, including the Prime Minister defending his wealth despite personal attacks from the Labour Party. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Ellie and Martin. OK, let's take a look at today's front pages now. The Mail leads with energy bills to fall 450 quid as price cap is slashed. Great news at last.
Yeah, really, really welcome news, but still very expensive, it must be said. Still going to be, I think, several £100 a month, isn't it? £2,000 a year, exactly. The Express says it's a hat trick. Boris and Carrie's pregnancy joy. 3 babies in 3 years.
Yes, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, so you might want to put down your sausage roll.
Yeah.
And the Mirror's exclusive splash has the solicitor of Fred West's wife, Rose, saying, give up your sick secrets, Rose. That's quite a smorgasbord there, very different stories to go through. So let's go through some more of those stories and the headlines inside the papers now. And joining us are the journalist and author Ella Whelan and the legendary broadcaster Pete Price. Pete, we're going to start with you. As I said, breakfast warning here. We're talking about Boris Johnson procreating and having children, and he's banging out his another one.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something else.
I was a bit worried.
I was like, where are we going with that?
Yeah, I've already had my leg slapped saying, now be careful how you mention this. Yeah. Of course, it's the public's fault, because they got rid of Boris. He's got nothing else to do to have babies, which is great. So this is his 8th baby, his 8th child.
We think, yeah.
Or is it?
Oh, we think.
Yeah.
Well, all the papers have said it. But I love it with social media. Carrie Johnson has put it on that she's having the baby. What did we do before social media?
I know.
It's amazing. It's great that he's got these old-fashioned values of big families. I think it's tremendous. It's a pity he didn't have the same values when he was Prime Minister.
Yeah.
It was just... You can't say anything. I can say it.
Well, I think it's lovely that they've had 3 children together. They're very close in age, 3 in 3 years. But they're beautiful, aren't they? They're blonde like their dad. We saw that on social media yesterday, didn't we?
Let's hope they've been able to comb their hair properly. But no, I mean, the lady at the end has, when we first met, was pregnant. I love the idea of having children together. If I was a straight man, I would have had the 3 kids together, so they grow up together and that and get it out of the way. Whether she has any say in it or not, if I had a lady in my life. What about you?
Oh, God. If my husband's watching, forget about it. Thinking about 2 under 2 and then 3 under 3, I don't know about that. But, I mean, you know, on a sort of personal note, it is wonderful news for Carrie because she obviously had terrible trouble with a miscarriage previously, and this must be something that she really wants, and so congratulations to her. I mean, hopefully she'll be able to, as you know, they are married, she'll be able to get him to be involved in these kids' lives, hopefully, whereas maybe it'll rub off on some of his other kids. But there's, you know, it is unusual, actually, because there is at the moment, there's a lot of discussion about birth rates, particularly in this country, and about the fact that most people aren't having larger families, so this is perhaps bucking the trend. Might they have something like a nanny or someone to help out? I suspect so.
They've got that lovely big house in Oxfordshire now, haven't they?
I couldn't imagine him changing nappies in a million years.
Well, he said he did.
I couldn't imagine it.
He says that's what he's doing. He's spending a lot of time.
I had to have a cabinet meeting to organise it.
It's interesting as well. He's 58 years of age. Carrie is now 35. Robert De Niro became a dad. 78 was it? Not quite though, but just goes to show that
How
blokes.
was he? 58.
58. Yeah, blokes can keep knocking them out, as it were, even though
knocking them out.
Kids.
See, now I'd have been told off.
Sorry.
I'd have said that.
I knew this story would make me specifically lower the tone. Must apologise if you're out there having your breakfast. Should we move on? Let's move on now.
Well, I must say, though, I got into... speaking of social media, I did get into a bit of a deep dive on Carrie Johnson yesterday on Instagram. She's very, very attractive. I don't think I appreciated this before. Very attractive and obviously very intelligent as well, so I just thought I'd share that. That's why I spent...
I'm glad you shared that.
Yes.
I would have missed that for the world.
Well, obviously, Boris thinks she's attractive. That much we know.
I wish he'd do something with his hair. There must be a hairstylist out there can help the man.
Well, maybe if she's doing the kids' hair, maybe Carrie can turn her attention to her
Boris.
husband.
Oh, no, she won't go near him now. She won't want another one straight away.
Right. Well, let's move on to the current Prime Minister now, Ella, and get the violins out, it seems, because Rishi Sunak has been hit by the cost of living crisis. Of course, this is about the Sunday Times rich list out tomorrow, and he's lost a bit of money.
Yeah, I don't know if moving on to something that's no less stomach-turning is whether or not we should have sympathy for the Prime Minister because he's lost millions of pounds, or at least more accurately, his family has. So his wife has shares in the Indian IT company Infosys, which has had some of its shares drop. So she's lost the estimated around... their estimated wealth at the moment now is £529 million, pennies. How will they survive? But it's dropped by several million, and they detailed the rich list. He's right up there with, James Dyson, Richard Branson, all the rest of them. And actually, elsewhere in some of the other papers, there's some quotes from Rishi Sunak saying that he believes that Britain has got over the idea of being nasty about rich people.
Yeah, I think it's worth dwelling on that because Labour have been attacking Rishi for his family wealth. Certainly the non-dom tax thing has become a big attack line. Is it fair? Is it fair to attack people for being wealthy? I mean, because you don't do that in America. Why is it the politics of envy? What is it about the British where you have to knock people for being wealthy? Why shouldn't you be wealthy?
I quite like the British kind of sentiment of, kind of pricking people's egos or pulling people down in that kind of way that we don't do the sort of gauche kind of American style of showing things off. I think that's a quite humbling aspect of sort of the British attitude, which is a good thing. You're right. In the abstract, there's nothing. We need wealthy people to, start up businesses and to inject some, cash flow into the economy. I don't think anyone has a problem with that. But Rishi Sunak has this particular kind of ability to blunder into things and to just display his out of touches. Whether it's sort of taking stage pictures of himself trying to fill up like a Kia Prius or something, and and not being able to use the contactless, wearing these like £1,000 loafers around. All of it and that I think in itself wouldn't be anything to poke fun at, other than on a superficial level. But that teamed with, for example, his Chancellor, saying in the papers, there's nothing to see here about the economy, you're just all being too negative. I think that's what riles people and says, well, might it be the fact that you've never had to, metaphorically speaking, wipe your own backside financially, that you don't get what is actually going on here. So I think that's more the issue, which is, they've got him here in the South saying it never rains but it pours. I mean, there is a certain element of... I don't know, do people even notice if they lose £200 million?
I think it's very sad that we don't embrace people who are successful in this country. We love them until they become very successful, and then we seem to turn against them. Where in America, they embrace success. And I think it's sad. I know a lot of people, because we've worked in nightclubs all my life, who have made a vast amount of money and started with nothing at all and taken the chance and taken the risk. And I think we should, as Ella said, we need rich people to perform jobs.
OK, let's move on to a story of yours then, shall we, Pete?
Yeah, this is a great story.
Yeah.
This is Twiggy has called for restaurants to ban mobile phones.
In America, again, a lot of restaurants now are giving you discount on bills if you check in your phones. I think it was sad. I was in Little Italy the other night and a wonderful family came in, a big family, fabulous people, and every single one of them, including the grandmother, went on the phones. They ordered, they didn't do anything else and didn't speak once. I think it's sad because we laugh about it, joke about it, but in fact, if you look, you see these couples out and all you're doing is on the phone. And you think, she said, what am I doing? You know, get a life. And it's also killing conversation. It's killing children learning from older people, learning through conversation, so that when they go for job interviews, there's big problems. It is a major thing.
Yes, we've just got some breaking news there, Pete, that President Zelenskyy of Ukraine has landed in Hiroshima. He will be heading to the G7 summit. We'll, of course, bring that to you on GB News, but he has now arrived physically in person in Hiroshima. We were talking about him being involved in some way in a video message at the G7 conference, but he is now appearing in person. We'll bring you some live pictures when we can. So, Pete, back to phones at the dinner table. You think it would be very welcome just to put them away?
Absolutely, and they maybe should start doing it at home. I remember, because I'm from a different generation to all of you here, but my mother, the television went off. You sat round the table, you had dinner, and you talked about your day. And now people don't do it. And it is a big problem. You know, it really is a big problem because conversation gives you something to talk about and also helps you build, especially if you're younger, with your life.
Do you keep your phone away when you're at dinner?
I will try to. And if I'm watching something on television or I have to put my phone in another room. And I always have my phone on permanently silent. I never, ever have my phone ever on.
OK. Ella, what do you make of this story? Would you welcome no phones at the dinner table?
Yeah, I think it is an issue that we've lost a sense of just also being able to sit in silence. I think it's something that there is, you know, I'm not particularly invested in the kind of... There tends to be a moral panic that goes along with these things, particularly with kids, that, you know, as a parent, you're always told that screen time is like the equivalent of sort of giving your kids drugs. And, you know, any tired parent knows that that's not true. It's a useful tool to get them to shut up while you're, you know, making the dinner or something. But I do think that, you know, having access to instant entertainment all the time has had an effect on our attention span, and it has had an effect on our ability to just sit and think. And even, you know, comfortable silences used to be a thing in families or when you went out for dinner. I mean, you know, and you'd be able to just enjoy each other's company rather than having to constantly check social media.
And I say to my kids all the time that boredom is good for the brain. When I was a kid, you know, we didn't have like two channels on TV, no mobile phones, no internet, and you're often bored, and so you read and you use your brain, you had creative thinking, you thought about things, whereas now everything is instant gratification. I think there's a lot to be said for putting the gadgets away and just actually being a bit bored.
I love what Ella just said then. Put them on the screen while you're doing dinner. I am from a generation where you went out and played. You can play for 15 minutes and your mother would go, Peter, your dinner's ready, get in here now.
And maybe that's the way it should be, Pete. Maybe we should just be sending kids out to play instead of being on their phones. You will definitely have a view of that at home. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Ella, Pete, that is time, but you're with us in the next hour.
Goes too fast.
It does. We have too much fun.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks so much, Pete and Ella. Thank you.
OK, moving on now. For many of us, a relative's final resting place holds a special place in our hearts. The last physical reminder that they existed and they were very much loved.
But what can you do when distance or health means that you're no longer able to care for their grave?
Our South East of England reporter, Ray Addison, found out.
It's only me, just pottering.
Meet Amanda Paddock. At 58, she ended her career nursing the living and started caring for the dead as a grave cleaner.
I was an intensive care nurse and during COVID questioned my ability to carry on. I was exhausted and to think about what I wanted to do, I used to go up to the local cemetery And I was watching people trying to look after their headstones and graves, and most of them are mature ladies who really struggle.
Amanda now looks after 9 graves in Horsham, offering everything from anniversary visits to weekly cleaning. Jane Clark hired her when she needed help tending the grave of her father-in-law.
I know a lot of people feel that they have to visit a grave, and other people feel that once a person's passed away, they don't really want to go back to that time and back to the grave. So it's really nice having somebody that will go and look after it for you. When you get to see the before and it looks really sad and needs a lot of work, and then you get to see the after and it looks so much better. Especially after 23 years when she cleaned the headstone. It was just amazing. It just looked like it had just recently been put there.
Although still largely unknown, professional grave cleaning has been around for years. A decade ago, author Martin Knight launched Grave Care International and now has hundreds of clients based around the world.
I like graveyards. I've always liked graveyards. I'm very curious and I find them really interesting. And it always made me a bit sad to see even relatively recent graves not being tended. People move that area, they even move abroad, and they become infirm. So I had it in my mind for some years to start up a grave cleaning business.
For £200 to £300 a year, Martin's team will visit your relative's grave every 3 months, where they'll cut the grass, lay flowers and clean and polish the headstone. They also have a number of celebrity clients, including former politician Anne Widdecombe.
In the old days, generations used to tend the family grave because they still lived near. My parents were buried somewhere where I used to live, but now I'm 200 miles away in Devon. So, I feel that the grave is cared for. I also feel that, I'm doing the right thing by the church and so that people don't walk through tatty graveyards.
Although Amanda Paddock is new to the business, she says she has no plans to quit and feels at home among the tombstones.
I will do it until I can't do it anymore. I just, I'll puddle on. If I can still bend down to do the plots at 70 plus, then I shall carry on doing it because it's just so peaceful, so relaxing.
Ray Addison, GB News.
Oh, what a lovely lady.
Yeah, I find that package, who'd have thought the package about graveyards is actually really moving and uplifting, the sort of serenity, the peace you find, and that connection to those who aren't there through a physical thing that just gives you that focus. I think it's a wonderful package, that.
Yeah, it really, really is, and it's resonated with a lot of you this morning. Jack says, good morning. Such an interesting segment regarding care for graves. I get so much joy going to our family's grave and cleaning it. I completely understand why people would employ people to do this for them. Really enjoying the show today in Herne Bay. Thank you, Jack.
We've got some nice weather there. And Lorraine echoing that sentiment there. Good morning. I've just watched a very interesting item about cemetery care. I live in Scotland and my late parents' grave is in the Midlands and I'm unable to care for this, and so I'll be getting in touch with the grave cleaners. Well, I hope that's brought some peace to you there today, Lorraine. Thank you for your comment.
Yep, so true. Lots of people, it is an expression, isn't it, of love, isn't it? And that person is still loved, and you do want to keep that grave looking pristine and beautiful because you care for that person still. And do keep your views coming in on any of the stories that we're talking about today. gbviews@gbnews.uk. But do stay with us because coming up, will working families finally get relief on their energy bills? This is Breakfast on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you. It's a sunny start to the day for England and Wales. And we keep warm sunny spells into the afternoon. Cloudier for Scotland and Northern Ireland. And here the weather a bit more mixed this weekend with some rain at times. The reason being, high pressure extends all the way from the Azores all the way to Scandinavia. This area of high pressure keeps things settled in many places. But some weather fronts will approach from the northwest and they'll weaken, but they'll also bring areas of cloud and outbreaks of rain at times. A few light outbreaks of rain clearing through Northern Ireland, eastern parts of Scotland first thing, a damp start for Shetland, for example. Then brighter skies emerge for central and northern Scotland. Temperatures here rising as a result, 19 or 20 Celsius for the Murray Coast, and also bright for the southeast of Scotland. But the sunniest skies are expected across England and Wales, 22 Celsius in places. However, there will be this cooler onshore breeze for North Sea coasts. Then into the evening, we keep the clear skies across England and Wales, and as a result, temperatures will fall. Another cool night is expected. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, extensive low cloud and mistiness around the west will move east overnight, bringing some persistent spells of rain. Now, for the far south and southeast of Scotland, it stays largely dry, but elsewhere it's damp and it's cloudy and it's mild as we begin Sunday. England and Wales, meanwhile, a cool start, but a bright blue skies start once again, and temperatures will soon rise as a result. Chance of some low cloud around some of these North Sea coasts, and chance of some cloud building across central and southern parts of England through the day. But otherwise, a fine spring day expected once again, high teens, low 20s. Scotland and Northern Ireland, grey, misty skies first thing, rainfall tending to ease later and turning brighter in the far north and northwest as well. But by Monday and Tuesday, fine and dry with plenty of warm sunshine across the UK, with that high pressure developing much more widely once again.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Saturday, the 20th of May. Today, Zelenskyy gets Top Gun support. The United States approves sending F-16 fighter jets to reinforce Ukrainian troops.
And Joe Biden will hold talks with the Ukrainian president in Hiroshima, with the G7 expected to unveil new, harder sanctions against the Russian economy.
Energy bills could be slashed as early as next week. Reports suggest that the new summer price cap could ease the burden of bills by £450 a year.
Long overdue good news there, and Rishi Sunak defends his personal wealth. The Prime Minister says personal attacks from Labour on his family don't bother him. Well, good morning, I'm Martin Daubney.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News. Well, we do know that President Zelenskyy has now landed in Hiroshima ahead of appearing in person at the G7 summit. He tweeted about 10 minutes ago. This is the tweet. It says, Japan, G7, important meetings with partners and friends of Ukraine, security and enhanced cooperation for our victory. Peace will become closer today. So that's a tweet from President Zelenskyy in the last 10 minutes. That's ahead of bilateral talks between President Zelenskyy and Joe Biden that we know will take place a little bit later on today at the G7. And this is after the Americans and Joe Biden signed off on the use of F-16. They're going to be sending them over to Ukraine, a major boost for Kyiv.
Yeah, and quite a U-turn as well. Initially, it was felt that the Ukrainian pilots wouldn't be able to adapt or even use them. And these are things that are worth like 90 million quid a pop. It's not like giving someone the keys to your Ford Escort. This is a massive undertaking. But apparently, they've changed their mind, and now they reckon they can fly these things in possibly as quick as 6 or 9 months.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. And it is interesting as well to see him appear in person, because we've been talking about him perhaps doing a video message.
Yeah.
But as Nigel Nelson, our political commentator, mentioned earlier, there's something personable about Zelenskyy and persuasive. He knows it works to appear in person. He knows he could get that military aid. And he's going to try and persuade the likes of India and Japan, who haven't yet offered military aid. He's hoping at the G7 he can persuade others to do so.
Yeah, he's become something of a kind of Bono of the political circuit. You know, he goes on a global tour, he's got air miles, and he seems to be very, very persuasive and very effective.
It works, doesn't it?
At persuading world leaders to part with billions of pounds. So, yeah, there we go. Look, you've been getting in touch about loads of things this morning, but Ellie, you called this bang on at the top of the show. Nothing has got you going quite like seagulls, because a report has been out today about how aggressive they're getting, and there's a nationwide split. Apparently, in the south, seagulls are much more bold, they're braver, they're more deadly, they're swooping in, they're stealing our stuff. Whereas in Scotland, they're a bit more reserved. We've got some hilarious comments on this today, Ellie. Penny is adding to that now. In Watlington, the red kites are just as bad.
Oh.
My husband was sitting in the garden having pâté and toast for lunch, and a kite swooped down and pinched it off the plate. These birds are huge and can reach 6-foot wingspan. Our next door neighbour had a slice of ham taken in the garden from his sandwich. They're moving on to the deli counter now.
Well, there's a tax from above. It's not just seagulls, it would seem. The red kites are involved now as well. Stephen's been in touch. I don't think it's our own Stephen Dixon. But Stephen's in Tenerife, and he says, the seagulls here take your golf balls away.
What are they doing that for?
Why would they want a golf ball? One of our producers outside, Tom, was saying he thinks it's because they mistake it for eggs.
Right, actually, that's exactly right. Marion is saying here, I was playing golf at a lovely little course in Cornwall, and I just hit my tee shot, which landed halfway to the green, when suddenly a gull swooped down and picks up the ball and drops it back by the tee I had just hit it from. And here's the answer. You're right. I think he thought it was an egg.
They must have good eyesight, because they mistake golf balls for eggs.
Yeah.
I mean, you understand that, right?
And this is the comment of the day, Ali, please.
This is from Mel. Yeah, this has given us a really good giggle this morning. This is a seagull in Berwick. It actually flies into the shop. It flies into Greg's to get sarnies next to the door. I mean, that is intelligence on another level, isn't it? Flying into Greg's. Imagine.
Well, I'll tell you what, these seagulls, whatever you think about them, they've got good taste. I love a good Greg's myself. Anyway,
can't blame them, can you?
Let's move on now.
Now, it's good news for millions, as energy bills are predicted to fall by as much as £450 when the new price cap is announced on the 25th of May.
Yeah, good news at last, and predictions by market analyst Cornwall Insight indicate there will be a decrease of around £1,200 from the April cap, which was set at £3,280.
Well, for more, let's speak to former Labour advisor and author Kevin Marr. Good morning to you, Kevin. Really good to have you with us this morning. Now, this has been picked up on the front page of many of the newspapers this morning. Daily Mail says energy bills to fall £450 as cap is slashed. This is brilliant news for households, isn't it?
It's a very big figure. It will obviously be very welcome. I suspect the household in the country where this news will be most welcome will be probably 10 Downing Street, because it will remove a very big pebble in the government's shoe in terms of inflation and in terms of the crippling costs we've seen of energy, and that's both borne by households, particularly by small businesses as well, that have obviously seen energy costs skyrocket during a very difficult winter. So the sun is shining, and we're probably through the worst of the winter weather and all of that. So this news coming as it does, dovetailing with perhaps a bit more optimism in the economy and a bit more optimism out in the streets, will probably be translated as good news for the government. Now, if the quid pro quo with this being an international situation, that obviously energy prices driven particularly by the Russian invasion of Ukraine, if it's an international factor that sent them soaring, then it's also partly international factors that have seen them drop as well. So perhaps the credit for the government's action will be slightly limited. But as I say, I mean, Rishi Sunak will, I'm sure, chalk this one up as a good day and a good moment for him and the government.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say Rishi did say he would tackle inflation. He did say he'd bring down utility bills. So I know you were smiling through gritted teeth there, Kevin, when you said, well done. At least they've got some good news on that. But I want to come on to another point now, and that is we've been mentioning on the show so far, Labour Party are playing a bit dirty, attacking Rishi Sunak for his personal wealth. Doesn't seem to bother him. What's that about? Is that the politics of envy?
I mean, Rishi Sunak is a curiosity. He's by a country mile the richest prime minister that we've ever had in this country, and of course that corresponds with an unprecedented cost of living squeeze, which is affecting tens of millions of people. And we've of course got a pretty sluggish economy, and we've had very low wage growth for a very long time. So it's that juxtaposition that it's not necessarily the politics of envy, but it does play with a lot of people who say, despite appearances, he doesn't understand my life. And of course, what we're looking for in a prime minister, and we're obviously possibly 12 months away from a general election, is are you on my side? Is the big question. Do you understand my life, my world, my family, my community? And it's very difficult for somebody with extraordinary wealth to be able to convincingly do that. I think so. I think it's a very kind of effective seam to keep picking at. So Rishi Sunak saying today that it doesn't bother him, but I mean, what can he say really? I mean, I think it will be an issue. It will be a factor.
Kevin, do you think the Labour Party has an issue, a problem even, with successful people? Because Rishi Sunak's wealth comes from his wife's father's business, a very, very successful one. And the non-dom attack line has become one of the most used by the Labour Party towards Rishi Sunak. I mean, are they just attacking people for being wealthy at this point?
I don't think it's that at all. I think we've got to recognise that we've got huge economic disparities in this country, and when we're asking people to breathe deeply and take one for the country, whether that's on energy prices, cost of living, wage claims and all the rest of it, then you've got to kind of walk the talk all the way through society really, and we saw particularly through the kind of ill-starred Liz Truss 45 days as Prime Minister, the priority for the government was cutting taxes for the very, very wealthiest. And I mean, the fact is that doesn't really play very well in a democracy where as I say, tens of millions of people are not part of that cohort. They're not super rich, they're not super wealthy, they've not got international savings and all the rest of it that they've got to pay tax on. It's smart politics for Labour to address this, but this is an issue that is burning out in the country, and I think the opinion polls and all the evidence that we see, from the public supports that they want, they want a recalibration of the country and of society, and they want more fairness. And I don't think it's anything more than fairness. I don't think it's saying we don't want successful people or wealthy people. What we want is some basic fairness in society.
Okay, Kevin Marr, thank you for your input this morning. It's worth pointing out that the Tories, as of yesterday, at 13 years and 10 days, are now in power longer than New Labour were, but perhaps we're going to see a change at the next general election. Kevin, thank you for joining us on the show this morning.
Thanks.
Let's bring you up to date with what else is going on today. And Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has arrived in Hiroshima, where he's expected to meet with G7 leaders. Tweeting, he said important meetings with partners and friends of Ukraine will take place this weekend and that peace will become closer today. It's after senior US officials endorsed a plan to train Ukrainian pilots to fly F-16 fighter jets and for European countries to provide them. It's a major military boost for Kyiv.
And the Northern Ireland Secretary Chris Heaton-Harris has insisted that there's more than enough money in the Northern Ireland budget to provide all statutory services. It comes after several departments said they were facing shortfalls of hundreds of millions of pounds, with the Department of Infrastructure saying it may need to turn off streetlights.
More than 300 jars of honey were produced last year at Buckingham Palace, with some of it being served to garden party guests this year. Images released to mark World Bee Day show royal beekeepers tending to hives at Buckingham Palace and Clarence House. The Queen herself is a keen beekeeper, with honey made by her bees sold at Fortnum & Mason to keep money for charity. Now, over 10 million renters across the country will be free from no-fault evictions and bans on pet ownership. That's thanks to new housing laws under the Renters Reform Bill.
Yeah, last week the new bill was introduced to Parliament, and here's what Michael Gove had to say about it.
Well, my first priority when I became Secretary of State was to deal with the building safety crisis, to make sure that people who were trapped in unsafe homes at last had the investment that they needed. That's been secured, and now we're making sure that there are more people in the private rented sector who have the security of knowing that they cannot be evicted from their home on the basis of a rogue landlord trying to
A little bit more about the Renters Reform Bill. What protections does it give to renters?
So basically, it stops landlords on a normal tenancy being able to give tenants a Section 21 notice for no fault. So if the tenant doesn't fault for any reason, if they don't breach the tenancy, then a landlord cannot evict a tenant. On the good point, the Section 8 notice, which is breach of the tenancy, the government is now tightening that up, which has been a big move forward for landlords. Because over the years, when antisocial behaviour occurs, it's been very difficult, almost impossible, for a landlord to evict a tenant based on antisocial behaviour alone. So they are good points for both tenants and landlords, but certainly, yeah, the Section 21 no fault is great for tenants, and the Section 8 is good for landlords. So mixed feelings, I think, throughout.
And how much do you think, Ben, is this kind of just fiddling with protocol to kind of direct people's attention away from the real problem? And that is, there simply aren't enough houses being built in Britain, and that's what's really pushing rents sky high.
Absolutely, yeah. In the North East, we've seen that, I think, more than any other part of the country. HMOs, houses of multiple occupation, now in Darlington in the North East, are more popular than ever, and it's because the demand is so high. There isn't enough housing for people, so now obviously you've got landlord investors converting properties into 6, 8, 10 bedroom HMOs, and that's right because there is a shortage of housing. We're not building enough properties, and that'll just continue. And I think this, unfortunately, the negative side is because of that Section 21 notice being banned, that might then stop your accidental landlords, your landlords who didn't plan to become landlords. They decide to rent the property out, and may stop them doing that.
Ben, how long will it take for renters to actually feel this positive change? Will they feel it in the next year?
No, I think it's still actual rollout dates haven't been confirmed yet, to my knowledge. And like anything, it takes time. I think usually in these things, we had the electrical safety certificate coming a couple of years ago, and usually they give a year's notice on new tenancies. And then they give an extra year they say 1 year for existing tenancies, and then they often do another year for new tenancies. So I think it'll be a year or two at least before this is fully rolled out.
And Ben, it's interesting when you mention that because, of course, we have a general election before that. Lisa Nandy has been saying this week she'd go even further. The Labour Party would allow a 4-month statutory period of notice, giving more power to tenants, less to landlords, the legal right to have a pet, and removing control from landlords, and even the ability to make structural changes to houses, to properties from renters. So what's the market looking like for landlords? Are they bracing themselves, Ben, for bad news here?
Yes, unfortunately, I'm sure landlords will be watching this now and they'll be feeling, that it is getting tightening up. And the property ombudsman, we welcome that as an agent. We welcome that. It does get rid of your rogue landlords and rogue agents, which is a good thing. But parts of this reform bill, unfortunately, is a negative for landlords, and they will be looking at thinking, should I invest my money in property or should I look elsewhere?
OK, Ben Quaintrell, founder and managing director of My Property Box. Thank you. That was excellent. Thanks for joining us this morning. Have a great day.
Now stay with us. There's lots more to come, including the battle for Premier League survival. We're going to have all of your weekend sport next with Aidan McGee. You're with Breakfast on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You Reds.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 8:22. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Ellie and Martin. Still to come on today's show. We'll be heading over to Whitby at 10 to 9 for the biggest fish and chip festival in the UK. Looking forward to that. But do you think your local chippy is still the best?
And are seagulls stealing their chips in Whitby? That's what I want to know. At 9 o'clock, we're going to bring you the latest on the F-16 fighter jets being sent to Ukraine. In the last hour, President Zelenskyy has confirmed his arrival at the G7 summit in Japan.
And please remember to get in touch all the usual ways. gbviews@gbnews.uk or, of course, on Twitter @gbnews. Now, I'm sort of shaking at the knees for the next bit here, because for today's biggest sports stories, we can bring in the legendary broadcaster and the most perfumed and finely scented man in all of television, Aidan McGee. You can smell him before he walks in. You smell lovely, mate.
Thanks.
But look, massive day today, massive day in the Premier League.
He hasn't stopped talking about it since
I know.
I know.
I've been hearing it. I can hear it, don't worry.
Yeah, I mean, for me, as a Forest fan, I'm always open about that. Arsenal today at the City Ground. If Forest win this, we can have one foot on the beach.
Without doubt, but it has implications at the top of the table as well. I mean, Forest winning today will hand the title to Manchester City. Manchester City are in action tomorrow against Chelsea, of course, at 4 o'clock. But Forest, looking at their own situation, it doesn't put them mathematically safe, I don't think, but it's a huge shot in the arm if they could win that game. Don't forget, they're the ones who've shown real form in that bottom, that group of that. I mean, Southampton have already gone, but they beat Brighton at home. They beat Southampton at home. They got a point at Chelsea, having trailed twice last week. It's still a tough trip going to Stamford Bridge, so credit there. So they're the ones who've really... They had a bad mid-season, or certainly between sort of January, February, March. They weren't particularly good and lost a bit of form. They looked for all the world. I think it was they hadn't won in 13 games or something. It looked as if they were going to fall through the trapdoor. And it's so hard, Martin, when you come up. And especially when you've not been in the Premier League since 1999, you have a lot of cobwebs to shake off. You've got to re-establish yourself as a Premier League club. It's difficult because I always remember Forest as a top club when I was a kid. And yet if you told me when they got relegated in 1999 they wouldn't come back for another 21, 22 years, whatever it was, I'd have said you're barking mad. There's no way a club like that can stay down there for that period of time. But when you come back, there's a period of adjustment. You have to survive that first season, and they've given themselves a huge chance today. And the home form, of course, don't forget. I mean, they've won nothing. They've won nothing. They haven't won a game away from home. They did get that result at Chelsea. You were going to say about the home form.
I was going to ask you about the home form, yes.
Yeah, they've done everything. All their points, well, not all their points, but vast majority of their points have been garnered at home. And that's one thing you have to do, Martin, when you're looking to stay off the threat of relegation. Your home form has to be good.
And another big battle down there today. Wolves-Everton. Everton really need a result today, or they're looking very, very wobbly.
They do, indeed. I mean, they've been patchy recently, had that fantastic result against Brighton. But how much do you read into a defeat a week later against Manchester City at home? I mean, they're just brushing everybody's side at the moment. I mean, if they can do that to Real Madrid in the week and beat them 4-0, it's certainly no disgrace. Everton losing at home to the champions-elect. As I say, City can be champions tomorrow if results go their way. Look, Everton they're not in terrible form. I mean, we know that Southampton have already gone. Forest are playing well, as we just mentioned. West Ham in action at Leeds tomorrow. Leicester in action on Monday. Now, they're the ones who've really fallen away. Leeds showed a bit of fight last week when they got that 2-2 draw against Newcastle. Sam Allardyce said going into that game they had to get something, and they duly did. But that's a tough trip tomorrow to West Ham. West Ham might look to rest a few players, though, because obviously they've got European commitments coming up, and they had a tough trip to an emotionally exhausting trip to Alkmaar earlier in the week. So that's an opportunity for them. They'll fancy their chance of going back to their old club, Sam Allardyce, and getting something. I would have thought it's got to the situation now where they kind of have to.
Yeah.
Big battle at the bottom, obviously, 5:30. That's on in the pub. I'll be going home after this, getting a couple of hours shut-eye, and I'll be just... it's like Christmas Day for me. Could still go wrong. That's the joy of football.
Were you a fan all those years when they were in the Championship, though?
Mate, I was there in 1978 when Forest knocked Liverpool out of the European Cup, so don't talk to me about heritage. Mate, there is also, lest we forget, a battle going on for the top 4, all to play for in Champions League European spots.
Well, look, Liverpool are just in the mood, aren't they? I mean, I think about 3 months ago, Jurgen Klopp said we're in the mood for chasing. So this what he was referring to is the fact that they had no form in the middle of the season, but for all the world, it looked as if they were going to miss out on top 4, but they've steadily just ground down their wheels, haven't they? Or ground down the wheels of Manchester United, particularly. Man United, though, they won against Wolves last week. They're in action at Bournemouth today. Bournemouth are safe. I would fancy that United will go there and win. And if, you know, all Man United asked for at the start of the season was that, given all the problems they had last season, they'd be in the top 4. It's in their hands. If they win at Bournemouth, it doesn't really matter too much what Liverpool do. Having said that, Liverpool really need to be in the Champions League. If they're going to do a rebuild this summer and they're going to get all these new midfielders in, they're going to attract all these players from all around Europe, they need to be in the Champions League. Being Liverpool isn't going to be quite enough when you're up against sides like Liverpool and other clubs around you who are going to, well, including Manchester United, who've got Champions League football on offer.
Yep. OK, so there are other sports in the world. So sometimes we forget about that, especially on these crucial days. You've got a bit of golf for us.
Yeah, that's right. We've got the PGA Championship going on at the moment. We've got overnight leaders, Scotty Scheffler, Victor Hovland and Corey Connors. They're leading at this stage. Now, the subplot to this, Martin, is that there are a couple of LIV golfers in the top 6 now. LIV is the breakaway Saudi-backed tour. And they're playing for Ryder Cup places, but, you know, we still don't know whether they're going to be eligible for the Ryder Cup. It's going to be very embarrassing if one of those two, say, Brooks Koepka or Bryson DeChambeau, who recently defected to LIV, go and win the thing. I mean, we're only halfway through at the moment. It finishes tomorrow night. It could be very, very embarrassing for the European Tour and elsewhere, and the established order, if one of those two goes and wins it and doesn't even earn a place in the Ryder Cup. I mean, that would be very disappointing for them. They always say they want to compete, and these two organisations these two tours are going to have to learn to coexist. They really are, because they can't. It's not good for the sport when constantly the build-up is dominated by what about LIV, what about the European Tour, etc. It's quite unedifying.
Aidan McGee, thank you for that update. I mean, I'm just counting off the hours now till kick-off. 5:30 is a long way away.
I know.
But thank you very much for that update.
I'll see you next hour.
Thanks, Aidan. See you next hour. Well, Craig's been in touch. Good morning to you, Craig, saying, good to see Ellie and Martin this morning. I hope Martin is not too nervous about the Forest game this afternoon. I know I am. Come on, you Reds.
You Reds. Sorry for being so biased. I know Eamon gets told off about this, but come on, allow me.
Open about it.
A little indulgence. It's been a long time since we've had any sort of love and joy as a Forest fan.
Well, up next, school leaders say that AI is now becoming a threat to our education system. This is Breakfast on GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 8:32. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Ellie and Martin.
Let's go through some of those headlines in the papers this morning. Joining us to do just that is journalist and author Ella Whelan and the broadcaster Pete Price. Good morning to you both. It's been great to have you with us this morning. Ella, let's start with you, shall we? And this is a story in The Guardian from Sadiq Khan, who says he's been left with death threats and PTSD.
Yes, so in an interview he's described the kind of things that he says he's had to deal with over the last few years, whether it's the tragedy of Grenfell, what he calls post-traumatic stress of the pandemic, and he says that he gets a significant number of death threats and things like that. And he says that has all contributed to what him and his doctor have described as a cumulative PTSD. So he's quite quick to say it's not anything like PTSD that, I don't know, people who have served in wars or refugees or something might suffer, but that it's a kind of a cumulative effect. And I don't know if you can tell watching at home, there's this slight tinge of cynicism in my voice, which is that I don't think, no one wants to revel in anyone being unwell. But the interview also talks about how Khan wants to seek a 3rd term in office, that he actually says that he wants to serve for 6 terms because he has a very large... he's got a kind of grand plan to completely overturn, for example, the way in which cars can travel in London. He has plans to... He's already expanded the ULEZ. He wants to do some quite significant things in relation to London transport. And he's come under quite a lot of criticism for that. So you do wonder if this is one of the kind of things that politicians do sometimes do, which is when they're under heavy criticism, they play the victim card. And I know that sounds very uncharitable of me, but...
Well, I mean... They also reach out to a sympathetic newspaper and have a fawning cover story. Undeniably, politics is a brutal place. Having been to the European Union, I've got to say I've never met a politician as unpopular as Sadiq Khan on his own turf. And I think what's happened here with ULEZ, as you mentioned, he's overreached. He's dragging in £500 million extra of tax per year. It's hammering the poorest motorists. There's been a massive backlash, and suddenly Sadiq is crying about it. Is that unfair, Pete?
Every time I come to GB News to do the breakfast papers, every single taxi driver I've spoken to starts talking about him.
Oh, really?
And what do they say? What do they tell you?
Dreadful. Couldn't repeat it. I couldn't repeat it. Really? People are very, very angry about him, very angry. And it's starting to trickle up north. People are saying, what's going on?
To be fair to Sadiq Khan, though, I mean, he's talking about... he's talking about death threats and the mental trauma that he suffered at the hands of his role. You can understand that there's a lot on his plate, isn't there? He's got a lot to deal with, especially, in the wake of Grenfell and terror attacks and things like that. And on top of all of that, there's criticism, isn't there? I mean, he's open to that with his role. But it is a lot. one person.
Of course, and I don't think anyone sensible would poo-poo the idea that politicians don't have it particularly hard. I mean, you've got but also the reason why you've got it hard is because you've got a huge amount of power. And unfortunately, Sadiq Khan has used, I mean, in relation to, I'm very uncomfortable with sort of talking about your personal trauma in relation to Grenfell. I mean, that doesn't sit quite right with me. I don't think he particularly suffered as much as, certainly not in comparison to anyone who was related to anyone who was involved in that tragedy. But that aside, I mean, there has been a scandal semi-revealed that the mayor's office has in their consultations around ULEZ basically sort of fudged a lot of the results. He's pushed forward with putting in low traffic zones and into boroughs where there is literally no transport. This is at the same time that bus and train fares are going up under TfL. So, I mean, yeah, call me a cynic, but I'm not sure that we're supposed to have a huge amount of sympathy for someone who is not only, the stresses of the job is an important factor, but if you're not doing the job well, which I think a lot of Londoners think Khan isn't, then it's a problem. Though, with the proviso, and having said that London is also full of a lot of Green fanatics, and he does get voted in. I'm not trying to pretend he's not popular in that way.
If the job is so stressful, you get one chance in this life, leave, get another job.
Yeah, and it's interesting, he said he wants to stand for 6 terms, so it can't be that stressful if he wants 3 more rolls of the dice, Pete. And let's move on to one of your stories. Another concern teachers are having, we talked about AI earlier, now it's children as young as 11 are vaping.
Yep, pupils are being warned and they're going to be teaching them about the addiction of vaping. It seems to be a major problem that's sneaking underneath the radar. A third of under-18s have been exposed to vaping promotion online. So it's sneaking in. School children are not realising how sort of serious this is. About 40 countries worldwide have banned vaping. From the country. I say I'm from the days of smoking, and we didn't know about smoking. And of course, then we realised how bad it is. But I think there should be a lesson once a week, anything, about the whole thing. Vaping, drugs, everything. A world lesson of real life and telling you about porn on your telephones, about a lesson in life, because our children are being bombarded by these things, and it's sad. It's sad about it.
Yeah, it is. And do you think with vaping, it needs to be marketed differently? Because when you see the vapes in the shops now, they're all brightly coloured, fluorescent pink and green
and the shops
blue.
are very exciting.
Lovely flavours that smell great.
Excuse me, where's the money coming from? Kids, where is the money coming from to pay for this?
Well, they're probably
How much is a vape?
Pocket money.
Well,
should give him pocket money.
£5. Here we are. Shops are selling devices to young people for around £5.
Yes, so it's cheap.
The difficult thing with vaping is that it is pretty much the single most important factor in getting adults to give up smoking. It is the best way for smokers to be able to transition to become non-smokers, to go via the vape. We know that, and the figures speak for themselves. So, in one sense, I'm very pro-vaping because it's a good route out of smoking. But
if vaping was brought in correctly and medically, and the proof is there, as a gateway out of smoking, the counter-argument is it a gateway into smoking for young people?
Well, this is it. It's bizarre that you can now buy vapes that don't have nicotine at all in them. It's just sort of flavoured. I suppose it's akin to a shisha pipe. It's flavoured air, which then it becomes a kind of collectible thing, or the sort of nicely coloured vapes. But all of this comes back down to, I think Pete touched on it, which is a bit of adult authority, which is to say your mum or your teacher, whoever, just says you're not allowed to do this, and if you get caught with it, you're going to get,
My mother belted me when she found out I was smoking. I smoked for about 2 weeks, and she actually belted me. I know it's illegal to belt you, but I got a slap.
Yeah, well, many children, especially as young as 11, they probably wouldn't understand the nicotine levels of something like vaping. And where it's been marketed as a healthier alternative to smoking, they probably don't actually appreciate the health implications of vaping.
Another story related in a way, Ellen, moving on to yours now, The Times, page 4. Parents should avoid telling children they need to go on a diet.
Yes, this is kind of, I think this tells you a lot about the current trends in in parenting and the way we're meant to relate to our kids, which is that, some advice given by a team from the University of Bath and the British Dietetic Association says that instead of saying, you're getting a bit pudgy, kid, let's have a run around the park, or instead of using language like, I need to control my weight, I need to eat less, I'm getting a bit fat, they say that the language we use around children is really important, which is, instead we should be saying, I want to get healthy. So the message is that if you use words like fat around kids, they'll develop a complex. I think that that's kind of not giving kids credit enough for how resilient they are, that actually a lot of, you can have honest conversations with your children and say, your jeans are a bit tight, let's go play some football. But it's also, it's hard for parents to have any kind of say in how their kids are having a relationship with food. When you have things like, I was at a pizza restaurant last night, and the calories are all over the menu and things like that, which just is the most depressing thing. I mean, way to give teenagers a complex.
So what are you supposed to say to them?
Is,
what are you supposed to say to them instead of fat?
I think, well, you're meant to say, I would like to become more healthy or things like that.
Oh,
and it's just... As a matter of fact, the only thing that really works with kids is straight talking.
Yes.
If they no kid is particularly interested in getting healthy, but they might be interested if you put things in plain words and say, you're not going to feel good about yourself, or you're getting a bit fat or something like that. I think it's just all of this. The reason why I said it tells you a lot about parenting is because we are now being given instructions on how to relate to our kids on the most minute level. How to have a conversation about what you eat at home. And even, there's UCL, another group of researchers was reported in the Times, are saying that we need to have lessons for parents in how to address nutrition in their kids. And
that's really interesting.
See, lessons, that's absolutely dreadful. It's what you put in your mouth. That's what keeps you slim. It's if you stop putting that in your mouth. Watch what you're eating.
And it's interesting. You're right, because
sensible.
Back to that pocket money conversation. I see kids at my boys' school. And the kids from the poorer backgrounds, every day those kids are having chicken from the chicken shops. It's cheap. It's like £1.99 for a box of chicken and chips. And that's their daily meal. The parents don't want to cook. So unhealthy shops set up near schools because that's their captive market. There's no planning on that. But then as a libertarian, as a free marketeer, should we be legislating? I mean, we're talking about calories on menus, talking about closing down shops near schools. I mean, it's nanny state.
Yeah, but you're saying there about going and getting cheap food in the shop, cheap chicken. The amount of people that get Deliveroo and all those, and it's garbage they're getting delivered to their house, and they're paying that extra money to get the garbage delivered. So go out and buy proper food, buy a slow cooker and put some stew in it. It's easy. If you can't cook, throw it all in and cook it slowly, and it's good food for you.
I'm getting hungry now, Pete.
Yeah, well, maybe that needs to be in your life lessons, Pete. We need to do some nutrition lessons as well for kids.
We should.
I think even things like a slow cooker, I don't think kids would know how to make a stew.
But then we also have to be realistic and remember when we were all teenagers. And when I was a teenager, I was not thinking about what I was going to put in my slow cooker. You kind of, I wanted to save as much money of whatever pocket money or whatever I got my hands on for fun things, and lunch or whatever was you just eat what you can at that time. You don't actually put a huge amount of thought into it. And actually, one of the things that should be a kind of a worry about with kids in relation to the kind of calories on menus and stuff like that is if you get kids to obsess about food at this level, then you are going to see, and we are actually seeing, a rise in eating disorders and things like that, which is the other end of the spectrum. You want to just not worry too much about food when you're a kid, but when you hit 20, it all starts going downhill and you have to watch what you eat, by the way. Well,
not quite so pessimistic. Wait till you get to 50.
You can pretty much put anything, as long as you're staying a bit active, you can have the chicken and chips because
people aren't active because sitting in the room with their phones and their computers.
We sound very old and tired.
But unfortunately, that's what they're doing.
Now, Pete, I want to get over to your final story, because you may have noticed Pete's a Scouser. There's a story you'd like to cover here, Daily Mirror, and that is rags to riches businessman Tom Morris has been named the wealthiest Liverpudlian in history.
In history, And he's a great guy. Won't give interviews. You won't give interviews. I've asked 3 times for an interview. He won't give interviews because he's publicity shy, which is great. He started off as 21. He's absolutely brilliant because he does so much for charity.
How did he make his money?
So much. Home and Bargains. Amazing. And he's got now, how many is it? It's about 550 odd shops.
Wow.
But he started at 21. And they're tremendous shops. They're tremendous shops. But this man is just one of the lads. He's made his money worth 3.4 billion, apparently, according to the rich list, and done it all himself. But he gives so much back, does so much behind the scenes. And never boasts about it.
If you're listening,
and boasting for him.
If you're listening out there, Tom Morris, that was a blatant plea for a 4th attempt.
Interview, please.
For an interview.
Interview, please.
For Pete Price. Here we go, mate. Hope something comes of that.
Brilliant. Ella, Pete, really, really good to have you this morning. Good to see you. Thank you so much. Now, Whitby Sea Festival will entertain people today to celebrate their fishing heritage with cooking demonstrations from local and celebrity chefs.
Everything is making me hungry today. Slow cookers, now fish and chips. To discover some of its cultural gems and heritage, we sent our reporter Anna Riley to Whitby to search for the best fish and chips in the planet.
Good morning to you, Anna. How are you?
Good morning. Yes, Good morning. Good, thank you. Hope you're both doing well. What a lovely day we have for this festival as well. The sun is shining, which is just what we need for this weekend. And I'm delighted to be joined by Janet Deacon. She is the Head of Tourism and Culture at North Yorkshire Council. Janet, just tell us what we can expect today.
Morning. Well, the Whitby Fish and Chips Festival 2023 has got packs of entertainment throughout the next 2 days. So we have a music marquee where you'll be hearing lots of music from local bands, folk, jazz, rock, and that's been organised by Richard Granger, local musician. We've got the seafood kitchen. There'll be lots of demonstrations from local chefs as well as Eddie Scott, MasterChef winner 2022, and Phil Ackrill, who is at Grantley Hall. So there'll be lots of demonstrations and people can taste the food that is being served in there, so that's great. We've also got the Fishcraft Marquee, and the Fishcraft Marquee, we've got local fishermen and master filleters, and in there you'll be able to see lobster pot making, net mending, how to dress crabs and lobster, and also the master filleters will be showing you how to fillet fish.
Looking forward to seeing that. And what's the festival all about? What's the reason behind it?
So it's all about Whitby's maritime heritage. And again, a lot of the activity that we've got on at the library, up at the Whitby Museum, is all around the history. So you'll be able to see artworks over the years of Whitby's maritime history. We've also got Park Hall for today only. We've got Park Hall, who are the shipbuilders, opening up their yard so that people can actually go around and see how the ship's built, and there is a ship ready to be launched in there today, so that's really great. So it's all about Whitby's maritime heritage.
And just tell us a little bit about that heritage, because it goes all the way back to Captain Cook, doesn't it?
It does, yes. Captain Cook served his apprenticeship here, and the Endeavour sailed from Whitby as well, so it's lots of maritime history, and there's lots of trails. You can really come and immerse yourself in that history. And the great thing about this event is it's been driven by the community. So it's Whitby restaurants, it's Whitby chefs, it's Whitby cultural organisations that have put on the event. And the RNLI are playing a huge part in the event today. So they've opening their yards so that you can go in and have a look at how they work. And also the newly launched RNLI Museum is open as well, so you can learn all about the RNLI history.
And how big is the fishing industry still here in Whitby?
So yeah, there are boats that still sail from Whitby or come into Whitby. There's lots of seashell fishing and what have you that is certainly fished out of here as well.
And it's been done sustainably as well, isn't it, with the lobster catching?
It is, and again, as part of the festival, you can go and learn all about that. So the lobster hatchery is all about sustainable, making sure that there's lots of lobsters still within the sea and what have you. And some of the restaurants, for every meal that they serve, donate £1 to that lobster hatchery to make that happen.
Brilliant. Well, I can't wait for today. It's going to be a fantastic event. So that's, if you're in the area, it's the Whitby Fish and Chips event this weekend, and we've got the weather for it as well.
Oh, you do. The sun is shining. It's going to be a fantastic festival. Janet and Anna, before we let you go, we do just have to ask you, there's a story in the papers today about seagulls and seagulls punching. They could do that as well. But pinching people's fish and chips. Is that something that happens at Whitby? Is that a problem with the seagulls up there?
It does happen in Scarborough, because I reported not long ago about the issue that the council was having there with, they call it seagull mugging. So they were telling people not to feed any seagulls because it just encourages them. But Whitby, there is a couple of seagulls, but I think we're safe. Do you?
Yeah, and North Yorkshire Council are doing what they can in terms of making sure that, you know, people are safe, and, you know, we are sort of educating visitors not to feed the seagulls. But yeah, I mean, it happens up and down the coast, but we're doing what we can to as I say, keep everyone safe.
We'll hold on to our fish and chips this weekend. We won't be sharing with those pesky seagulls.
Oh, Anna, you are brilliant. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Janet and Anna, have a lovely time today. It looks wonderful.
And if I were you, I wouldn't get too confident about that, because you haven't got a bag of chips in your hand yet. You wait. We've started something here, Ali. You caught this right.
Oh, yeah.
That's like, we're being inundated with your tales of woe, of seagulls swooping in and taking your fish supper. This one here from Philip, this retakes the biscuit as well as the chips. Morning, Marty and Ellie. We went to Rick Stein's fish and chip shop in Padstow, I know it well.
Good spot.
And watched as a lady proudly carried her box of fish and chips to a bench, only to have it ripped from her hands by a gang of southern seagulls. Now they're doing it mob-handed.
A gang of seagulls, that's a new one. Claire says, I bought a bacon butty in a plastic carton once in St Ives, and I made the mistake of putting the carton on the roof of my van while I opened the van door.
Childish error.
The result was like a clip from the film The Birds. The madly flapping wings suddenly all around my head and the van, the butty and the carton had completely disappeared.
Yeah, and Brenda from Clacton. Brendan from Clacton-on-Sea is showing that even our pets' suppers aren't safe. Last summer, a gull entered the open patio door and ate my cat's dinner. He never forgot his free meal because he was back a few weeks ago peering through the closed door at the cat's dish and pecking at the glass. They're after everything, Eddie. Bacon, pate, golf balls,
they're not
cat's
fussy.
food. They're mad for it.
They are not fussy. This is all a story. We should probably explain why we're talking about this. A story in the Daily Mail this morning that apparently the seagulls on the south coast are the most bold and brazen. They're the most likely to pinch your chips or your ice cream or anything for that matter. But up north, they're a bit tamer. We can't quite work out why, can we?
Well, I'm convinced it's because they get more of a frosty response from the northerners who swipe them away, whereas the southerners are a bit more kind of not quite so clued
Well,
up.
Anna Riley didn't seem too fussed, did she, about the likelihood of a seagull
She'll regret that later, I'm
her
telling
lunch. We're also talking about mobile phone use in restaurants. This is the model Twiggy.
Yeah.
She's saying basically we shouldn't be using our phones in restaurants. Well, Sarah says people need to either move on or shut up when it comes to technology. I have an autistic son, so I can't just let him go out to play as he has little danger awareness. Also, he finds cafes and restaurants difficult, so he has his phone to distract him from others. He can't just sit there in silence. It's a really, really important take, that, Sarah.
And I love this really funny comment here. My late father was a teacher, and if I said to him I was bored, he'd say, imagine what it's like for everyone else if you're bored of your own company.
That's a good one. I haven't heard that one before. Diane from Swansea, haven't you noticed that a number of restaurants now put the menu online? That is true. It's a COVID thing, isn't it, really? And then you have to access it using your mobile phone. If anything, it's encouraging the use of phones at the dinner table. It's a good point.
Yeah, and it's certainly one that got Pete Price going. So what do you think? Ban phones altogether? Are we safe from seagulls? Keep it coming in. It's coming out thick and fast today. Okay.
Yeah. GBViews at gbnews.uk. But stay with us. Coming up, could fighter jets finally bring the end to the war in Ukraine? This is Breakfast on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, a very good morning to you. It's a sunny start to the day for England and Wales, and we keep warm sunny spells into the afternoon. Cloudier for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and here the weather a bit more mixed this weekend with some rain at times. The reason being, high pressure extends all the way from the Azores all the way to Scandinavia. This area of high pressure keeps things settled in many places, but some weather fronts will approach from the northwest and they'll weaken, but they'll also bring areas of cloud and outbreaks of rain at times. A few light outbreaks of rain clearing through Northern Ireland, eastern parts of Scotland first thing, a damp start for Shetland, for example. Then brighter skies emerge for central and northern Scotland. Temperatures here rising as a result, 19 or 20 Celsius for the Moray coast, and also bright for the southeast of Scotland. But the sunniest skies are expected across England and Wales, 22 Celsius in places. However, there will be this cooler onshore breeze for North Sea coasts. Then into the evening, we keep the clear skies across England and Wales, and as a result, temperatures will fall. Another cool night is expected. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, extensive low cloud and mistiness around the west will move east overnight, bringing some persistent spells of rain. Now, for the far south and southeast of Scotland, it stays largely dry, but elsewhere it's damp and it's cloudy and it's mild as we begin Sunday. England and Wales, meanwhile, a cool start, but a bright blue skies start once again, and temperatures will soon rise as a result. Chance of some low cloud around some of these North Sea coasts, and chance of some cloud building across central and southern parts of England through the day. But otherwise, a fine spring day expected once again, high teens, low 20s. Scotland and Northern Ireland, grey, misty skies first thing, rainfall tending to ease later and turning brighter in the far north and northwest as well. But by Monday and Tuesday, fine and dry with plenty of warm sunshine across the UK, with that high pressure developing much more widely once again.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know,
All
Kate
sorts of
Moss?
rumors, apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Saturday, the 20th of May. Today, Zelenskyy gets Top Gun support. The United States approves sending F-16 fighter jets to reinforce Ukrainian troops.
And Joe Biden will hold talks with the Ukrainian president in Hiroshima, with the G7 expected to unveil new, harder sanctions against the Russian economy.
Energy bills could be slashed as early as next week. Reports suggest that the new summer price cap could ease the burden of bills by £450 a year.
A lot of people cheering that news, and Rishi Sunak defends his wealth. The Prime Minister says personal attacks from Labour on his family don't bother him. Good morning, I'm Martin Daubney.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
So to our top story, it's day 2 of the G7 summit in Hiroshima, where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has just arrived in Japan to meet G7 leaders. Upon arrival, Zelenskyy tweeted that peace will become closer.
Well, his arrival comes after President Biden endorsed a plan to train Ukrainian pilots on F-16 fighter jets and has approved Western allies to donate the aircraft.
Well, joining us now is our political reporter, Catherine Forster. Catherine, so the man is back in town, the rock star politician touring the world, getting a lot of money out of it, performing a very, very powerful role. Is it the right thing, though? Biden's done quite a U-turn here. These jets were thought to be too hard to fly for newbies. Now they're giving them away so they can be flown in as soon as 3 months.
Yes, it's a real change and a huge victory for Volodymyr Zelenskyy before he even arrived in Hiroshima. This announcement by President Biden that F-16s could be supplied to Ukraine. Previously, America was very cagey about it, didn't want to give it the go-ahead. I think some concerns, obviously, about the potential risk of escalation in supplying these planes, and also the difficulty of training pilots. The Ukrainian pilots are not used to flying such sophisticated planes, and it could take up to 18 months, apparently, until they are actually delivered and able to fly them. But a big move, and obviously Zelenskyy is incredibly skilled at getting what he wants. You know, he was an actor. We see him in the military garb. He came here to Westminster asking for planes, give us the jets, gave the Speaker of the House a helmet. We have freedom, give us wings to fly. So he's very, very skilled in, getting results. But I think the feeling is that without these planes, how is this conflict going to be resolved? Because Putin obviously hoping that the West will get tired, it's very expensive, that eventually there'll be this sort of war of attrition and Western allies will simply lose interest. So this announcement with the jets, I think, is significant.
What do you think Zelenskyy will be looking for from the G7 now? I mean, we talk about his personal persuasive power. He wanted those F-16 jets. That's exactly what he's got. But he's arriving in person at the G7. We know he's landed now. He's going to be meeting with Joe Biden a little bit later on and holding talks with him. What else do you think he wants from this? Do you think he'll be turning his attention to perhaps India and Japan and asking them to start to pledge aid?
Yes, I think so, because although the sort of NATO countries, the Western countries have been pretty squarely behind Ukraine. I mean, some divisions in how far and how fast to go, but pretty squarely behind. There's also 8 other countries at this summit that were invited by the Japanese Prime Minister, including people like Brazil and India, that have been much more really on the fence about this. So he will be hoping to talk to them in person and to build relations and to bring some of them on board. So it will be interesting to see what happens.
Well, they haven't just been on the fence. I mean, India, for example, has done a massive oil deal with Russia, taking all of that oil that the Western sanctions meant we weren't buying, which effectively is funding Putin's war machine. So there's a huge disconnect here, isn't there, about nations that they're asking to pull together. On the one hand, some of them seem to want to go to war, and on the other hand, give us your oil.
Yes, and of course, because when we decided in the West to buy much less from Russia, they needed to find new markets, and China and India were two of those. We're very, very happy to buy these at a great discount. And so, yes, as you say, they have been benefiting in some ways, but I think that the Western nations will need to make it clear to people like China, to people like India, that you can't have it both ways. If you want us to trade with you, to do business with you, and of course there's huge tensions regarding China with what they may or may not do in Taiwan, that you've got to, at some point, pick a side. And if you're going to continue to support Russia by buying, huge quantities of gas and oil, et cetera, that there may be consequences in terms of how Western countries then deal with you. But
Catherine, I wanted to ask you about something really fascinating that you said just in that break before we came to you, which was about the intentional symbolism from Zelenskyy about how he decides to dress, how he decides to appear in front of these world leaders, because that was really interesting what you were saying there.
Well, I think it's because he was an actor, wasn't he? So he knows the importance of how you look, how you present yourself. So when he came to Westminster back in February, I was really struck. Of course, we always see him in the khaki, don't we? You never see him in a suit and tie. Now, clearly, he hasn't just come off the battlefield, but he gives that aura, and also the way he crafts speeches. He's really very clever. So he came and he talked about, having delicious English tea and feeding into these things that, traditional British things, channeling Churchill, things that Churchill said. And he does that wherever he goes. He will tap into whatever, that nation. So he's very clever, and it is bringing results. But of course, this war doesn't show any signs of ending soon. And
I suppose anybody will be surprised if he just rocked up on a motorbike with a leather jacket and a sort of pair of aviators like Tom Gunn. That's the sort of zone he's in. But on a more serious point, Rishi has been sat down with Emmanuel Macron this morning. These international talking shots, we seem to come back with very empty pockets normally. We give away billions, be it in Pakistan, COP27, and now in Hiroshima. What's in these conferences for Britain? Because let's be honest, if you've got an audience with Macron, you should be talking about things that really matter to British voters, stopping the boats, getting something out of it that's meaningful for us rather than just giving money away. Is there anything in it for British voters, or is this just basically a bit of a chumocracy?
Well, the thing is, ultimately, the reason that our energy bills have gone through the roof and the cost of living is so high is largely the war in Ukraine. Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. The fact that, the war is happening has driven food prices through the roof, ditto energy prices. So it is in our interests to see this war brought to a close, because it is directly affecting us in terms of the money that we have to find to heat our homes and pay our bills. But also, Rishi Sunak is very good face-to-face. He can be a bit stilted when he's making a speech, but one-to-one, face-to-face, he's very good with people. So people like Emmanuel Macron, that obviously, we've had years of failure in stopping these boat crossings. It's been getting worse and worse and worse. Sure, we are chucking ever more money at the French, but it's part of this multi-pronged approach, and we will see this year, won't we? I mean, Rishi Sunak was saying only yesterday, stopping the boat is a priority. So I'm sure, will be talking about that. And of course, we'll wait to see whether it brings results. But also, Emmanuel Macron has been quite weak on China and Taiwan, and basically saying this is not really our problem. So again, these things that are happening a long, long way away ultimately do have an impact on us, because Taiwan produces 60% of the world's semiconductor chips. So, if China goes into Taiwan, that has big implications for all of us, not to mention the potential of conflict.
And this G7 is a big opportunity for Rishi Sunak to appear statesmanlike on the world stage, isn't it, after the crushing local election defeat and the conference last weekend of Boris Johnson's disciples, it seemed.
Bring back Boris.
Yes.
The Conservative Democratic organisation founded by Lord Cruddas. Yes.
Sorry, Catherine, just to cut you off. Rishi Sunak has just arrived there at the start of today's proceedings in Hiroshima. So that's just live pictures that we've got there of Rishi Sunak arriving.
They're 9 hours ahead, so it's sort of 6 o'clock in the evening. So they're already well on through their day while we're all just getting up.
You can see that they're gathering there for a photo opportunity. Lots of that at these sorts of summits. So we can see
we can see Joe Biden there. Joe Biden's awake. That's a bonus. Yeah, I mean.
So these are obviously not just the G7, but obviously the other countries that were invited, including Australia, South Korea, Brazil, India.
Yeah, and so, I mean, this is the call for a more unified global response to Ukraine. But as we were touching upon earlier, Catherine, it's very hard to do when you have some of those people in those photographs there are shoveling millions and millions and millions of dollars Putin's way by buying his oil, while other people there are demanding money from other countries to take a more unified military action, supplying F-16s. That's no mean feat. These things are worth $19 million each.
There at the end, you can see Justin Trudeau in the middle there, Rishi Sunak on the far right, Ursula von der Leyen just behind Rishi Sunak there. Gathering for that photo opportunity. But this is what we're talking about, isn't it, Catherine? It's this opportunity for Rishi Sunak to be photographed alongside these people, looking very statesmanlike. He's got a big smile on his face there at that photo opportunity. It's important for Rishi Sunak in terms of his image after a difficult time at home.
It is, and I think in many ways he will prefer being there to being at home at the moment because the Conservative Party, again, is becoming extremely unruly after losing, 1,060 seats in the local elections just a couple of weeks ago, beyond their worst really expectations. A lot of dissenting voices now, the NatCon conference last week, and, the immigration figures due out next week. He's got a lot of problems at home, and so a moment like this is good news for him. And
how important are the optics of events like this? Because we saw there, Rishi was right down the far end on the front row, and look, there's a love in there between Macron
and Biden, their arms around each other, and
the bromance going on. They're getting stuck in there, but we seem quite isolated down the end. Is that just coincidence, or do you remember all that time when Theresa May was very isolated on these foreign affairs?
Theresa May looking alone.
Signified Britain's isolation post-Brexit. And look, Rishi's not involved with the top brass there, is he?
Well, no, but, that's a moment, and it's easy to look at, a few seconds and extrapolate from that what that must mean. But I do think, obviously we're British, so maybe we would say this, but Britain has led the way in the response to Ukraine. Boris Johnson, one thing, whatever you think about him, he was the first with the support. We have led the way. We have led and others have followed. And so I think we do have a really important role specifically around Ukraine. And, this stuff does matter. It's signalling that goes round the world. Sure, we are no longer part of the EU, but we are a nuclear power. We're still one of the richest countries in the world. And we still have a lot to offer, don't we?
Yeah.
OK, Catherine Forster, thank you for that insight. I hope we come back with something more than just giving money away. That's just me.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Thank you. Now let's bring you up to date with other stories that are taking place today. And figures obtained by the Labour Party suggest there's been a big jump in the number of people dying in A&E. Data provided by NHS Trust shows that more than 23,000 people died in emergency departments last year. That's 22% more than the year before.
And Northern Ireland's Education Authority is one of several departments facing shortfalls of hundreds of millions of pounds, with the Department of Infrastructure saying it may need to turn off streetlights. The Northern Ireland Secretary, Chris Heaton-Harris, has insisted that there's more than enough money in the budget to provide all statutory services.
More than 300 jars of honey were produced last year at Buckingham Palace, with some of it being served to garden party guests. Images released to mark World Bee Day show royal beekeepers tending to hives at Buckingham Palace and Clarence House. The Queen herself is a keen beekeeper, with honey made by her bees sold at Fortnum & Mason to raise money for charity.
Now, hundreds of soldiers and sailors are to be trained from Monday to cover striking Border Force guards. Ministers are preparing for a potential summer of chaos at ports and airports.
Well, members of the armed forces will be checking passports at Heathrow, Gatwick and at Dover.
And we speak to the Chief Executive of the Business Travel Association now, Clive Ratton. Clive, good morning to you. So I would say this is great news, isn't it? Because the last time Border Force went on strike and the armed service people stepped in, things moved better than before.
Well, good morning, Martin. Morning, Ellie. It's interesting. I mean, at the moment, obviously, it is conjecture. They haven't agreed to strike, but given the recent history, we suspect that might be the case. And you're right. I mean, we've had soldiers in before on the borders and made it particularly efficient as it was coming through. And there's also been a lot of work done on the e-gates at the airport, so people not actually having to really go past a Border Force guard for many, particularly UK residents, but many others too. So I was disappointed to see some headlines talking about chaos once again as an industry that has suffered for a couple of years through the pandemic and then been hit by a lot of industrial action. People that are planning their summer holidays or their work trips don't need to see those words such as chaos again, because it hasn't actually been the case so far.
I mean, lots of people reacting to this will, of course, be very grateful for soldiers and sailors stepping up to the plate and helping in this way, but they may be concerned that it could compromise on security. I mean, 5 days training won't be the same as what Border Force staff have had.
No, it's not, but you have to remember that there are Border Force people in attendance, from senior managers down to act as backup. And, one thing, and I'd be quite closely involved in discussions around some of these planning for the strike, is that the Border Force will not let UK security be compromised in any way. And I certainly remain confident. Clearly, the soldiers will be prepared for just the average person coming through, and 99% of people coming to the borders don't cause us a problem through the airports. And it's that 1% that they will be there to help out with. So, I can see why people would think that, but the Border Force is very much managing to make sure our security is kept at its very highest levels.
Now, it's interesting, Clive, because a few months ago when Simon Calder, the legendary travel expert, was on Breakfast, he said that the Border Force strike had been the least effective strike in history because basically amazing service people stepped in and things carried on pretty much as normal. But from your point of view, in terms of business travel, how tiresome and disruptive are these strikes becoming?
Well, it's really tiresome. It's more the kind of messaging it sends out rather than actually the impact. People are trying to get back to doing business and travelling around the world to grow their businesses and also the UK economy, of course. And they were just tired of it. But I guess the other thing is it's gone on for so long that we've almost become too used to it. And as Brits, we're pretty adaptable and deal with anything that comes our way. And as you said, the truth is so far that it's only affects you really coming back into the country. And most people will go through the e-gates and not see too much hassle whatsoever on their return from their business trip or even their holiday.
And Clive, in terms of confidence as a destination, how is Britain shaping up? Now we're kind of seeing the back end of lockdowns, pandemic. Is confidence returning to Britain PLC? In
terms of visitors coming to the UK,
yes.
Do you mean, Martin?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it is coming back, but of course the help of the pound against the dollar, for example, helped a lot of US residents choose to come here. But there are still many things that make the UK a little bit more difficult in terms of cost and everything else. But the UK is a really popular destination. We have a lot to offer the global tourist and the global business traveller, and it's great. We're seeing people coming back into the UK in big numbers, and we just say, do come here. It's a great country. There's loads to see, and we want to welcome people from all over the world here.
Okay, Clive Ratton, Chief Executive of the Business Travel Association, thank you for your time this morning. And also I'd like to thank all of the service people out there stepping up to the plate to make sure Britain stays safe. You're the best of British. Thanks for your time.
Now, one of Britain's most popular agricultural shows is taking place today in Fife. It's still going strong after 200 years.
Yeah, thousands of visitors will come from all over Scotland and the rest of the UK, of course, to see livestock and machinery and have a very nice day out.
Well, our reporter Tony Maguire is there for us this morning. Good morning to you, Tony. Looks great already. What has today got in store at the Fife show?
Good morning. Yes, well, I'm already being
out journalists by about 500 sheep behind me, but certainly the atmosphere here already is building despite the show only really opening about 15 minutes ago. A full day of festivities for families, and as you say, thousands and thousands of people from all over Scotland are going to come here today to see the machinery, both modern and vintage, as well as all the livestock on show. Just behind me here there's at least about 8 species of sheep that I've never actually seen before in my life, and I think that's saying something. We've also got dog shows and we have show jumping with some beautiful horses, some Clydesdales here, probably slightly bigger than the Kelpies towering over Falkirk. And of course there's going to be a vintage tractor parade later on. I'm told that, well, it doesn't sound particularly phenomenal actually when you're there and seeing all this old heritage of agriculture machinery. It's actually quite something special. And of course, just in terms of families, there's so much to do here in terms of activities, lots and lots of things to eat, and everybody seems extremely approachable. So if you get any questions about the livestock themselves, you know, it seems like a great place to come and ask questions. And of course, my personal favourite, we're going to have some Highland coos arrive not too long from now, so hopefully I can arrange to have a quick interview with one of them. I'm sure they've got some choice words to say on this annual show. A huge event for Scotland and for Fife, and a really great day out of families ahead, assuming that of course the weather holds off in our favour.
Well, let's hope it does, Tony. It sounds absolutely action-packed, and hopefully you do get to chat with those cows a little bit later on. We have to ask you before we let you go. We've been doing a story about seagulls today. Apparently, seagulls on the south coast here in England are the worst in terms of stealing people's chips. And in Fife, you're on the coast. Is there a problem with seagulls up there? Do they pinch people's chips?
I think it's kind of part and parcel of being a seagull. I mean, I can't really comment much in Fife. However, I was down in Ayrshire yesterday, and what I will say is I saw a seagull basically headbutt a fully grown 35-year-old man to the ground and basically steal his 6 squid. Now, obviously, the squid is good there. They ranked 3rd top in the last Fish and Chip Awards, so, you know, they probably at least are keeping up to date with that.
Oh, Tony, that is fantastic. I love the fact we just threw that at you and you knew a story about the 6 squid.
But that was a seamless transition there,
Tony. You're a star. Have a lovely day today. Enjoy it all.
And I've got to say, Ellie, you've really started something today. A seagull headbutting a 35-year-old man to the ground. This is getting out of control.
It's fantastic, isn't it? Really, really good. Loads of you getting in touch with your seagull stories today. It sounds quite traumatic for a lot of you, it must be said.
There's one here, Paul. Whilst on holiday in St Ives, Cornwall, I bought this amazing double scoop of ice cream. Oh. First lick and boom. A seagull the size of an albatross hit the back of my head and swooped off with my ice cream. I was literally dazed by the impact. So they're after everything, sweet, savoury, nothing is off limits.
Dazed by the impact. He says he's been left with a headache and he was in pain for the rest of the holiday. So there's a theme here. Tony just told us about them headbutting someone.
They're getting out of control.
Paul, sounds like you've had a similar experience. Awful. Keep them coming in anyway. It's making us laugh this morning. It's a great story. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Stay with us, though, because up next, Captain Sir Tom Moore's daughter is going to give us her reaction to the film being made about her legendary father. This is Breakfast on GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. You are watching and listening to Breakfast with Ellie and Martin. Still lots to come in the programme.
And Rory McIlroy is 5 strokes behind the leaders at the PGA Championship, but does he have any chance of a comeback? We'll find out at 9:40.
And how do you trace a Russian diamond? We're going to be joined by one diamond specialist who can tell us how to avoid buying any sanctioned luxury items at 10 to 10. And we're going to be looking at diamonds, and I can't wait.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't afford a sausage roll at the moment, never mind a diamond. But anyway, remember to get in touch with us at gbviews at gbnews.uk and more, if you like, please, about seagulls.
Yes. Now, the late British Army captain Sir Tom Moore is getting his very own film. The 100-year-old veteran became an inspirational figure during the pandemic after walking 100 laps in his garden. Do you remember that?
I do, and who can forget, of course, he raised over £32 million for NHS charities and sadly died in 2021. Production is expected to start this autumn with shoots in the UK, Thailand and Barbados.
Well, Hannah Ingram Moore, the late veteran's daughter, joins us now. Good morning to you, Hannah. Really, really good to have you with us this morning. We can see that really beautiful image of your father behind you being knighted by the Queen, I believe. It's not quite clear from here, but I think that's what it is. So good to see you this morning, Hannah. What is your reaction to this biopic being made about your father's life?
Well, good morning. Yes, this incredible photograph behind me of that amazing day. I think I'll take you back to the moment when my father was told people wanted to make a film about him. he couldn't believe it. He genuinely couldn't believe it. He was staggered and had such fun thinking about who would play him. But most importantly, what he wanted to know was who was going to play young Tom. And we're thrilled, of course, that this is coming to pass. And as a family, we just couldn't be prouder.
And of course, some of the locations quite exotic as well as Britain, Thailand and Barbados mentioned there. This is to kind of portray Captain Tom's earlier life in the military, right? I mean, he got around.
Well, he certainly did. And his formative years in the army, fighting for freedom for all of us in Europe, but most importantly, he was fighting in Burma, fighting the Japanese. And unfortunately, they can't film on location in Burma, so they'll be filming in Thailand. And with wonderful images behind of just some of the most spectacular days of his life. He lived 100 wonderful, rich years full of love, life, laughter, and loss. And finally, when they film in Barbados, it will be because that was the last family holiday we had together, which was truly the most magical time together that we had.
Are you really pleased that you had that time in Barbados with your father? Because I know at the time there was some concern, wasn't there, about his age and about his health. But for you, you feel as though you had those memories and that precious time with him.
Absolutely. And it was on his bucket list. He wanted to go to Barbados and meet the cricketers. And he was signed off with a good bill of health before we went. Of course, we wouldn't have gone if he wasn't well. But honestly, what I can tell you is we sat together as a five, just having the most incredible time together. He sat and watched his two youngest grandchildren play on the beach. Georgia, who was then 12, running in and out of the sea. He got a bit of a suntan. And wherever he went, people just wanted to love him and take photographs of him. It was magical.
Hannah, two questions. How involved are you in the production of the movie? And, of course, the big question on everybody's lips, is there any speculation about who's going to play Captain Sir Tom, the legend?
We're not involved in the production. That is with Fred Films and their other teams. And yes, speculation runs wild. What I can tell you is that my father was very clear about who he wanted to play young Tom. He wanted Spider-Man to play him, Tom Holland. And he made that really clear. He said, I'm not so worried about the old Tom. Who's going to play the young Tom? So that's what I can tell you.
Oh, and do you have any idea of who would play you, Hannah?
Oh, no, it makes me squirm to think about that. No, not at all.
Oh, it's so crazy to think, isn't it? Your family are going to be in a film and a life as legendary as your father. What do your children make of it, Hannah?
Oh, just pride. Remember that Benji, who's now 19, was 3 when my father moved in, and Georgia was born a year after. That she knew nothing else than living with her grandfather. So they are just, thrilled for him, thrilled for the legacy, thrilled for the memory. And what fun, ultimately, to imagine that there's a film about your grandfather. Just incredible.
And Hannah, movies can take a long while to make. Do we have any idea at all about when we can expect to be able to see this movie?
I think it all depends. It depends on timing, actors' availability, the weather. But let's hope that it should be available in 2024, let's say at the latter end. But unfortunately, that's not for me to say.
Oh, well, Hannah, we really look forward to seeing it when it comes out, as I'm sure people up and down the nation will feel exactly the same way. As you say, Captain Sir Tom Moore, what a legend, and so many people will remember that beautiful image behind you, him being knighted by Her Majesty, the late Queen Elizabeth II, and, of course, the laps around the garden. What a legend. Great news that a film is being made about his life. Thank you so much for joining us. Hannah Ingram Moore, really good to see you this morning.
And do you know who I'd like to play Captain Tom towards the end?
Oh, would you?
No, who I'd like to.
Oh, I thought you said you'd. I was like, oh, okay.
Not quite that old yet.
Yeah,
prosthetics and everything. Yeah. I'd like to see Michael Caine. I think Michael Caine would be a brilliant, heritage, British, fantastic, legendary performer. Fill in those shoes, big shoes to fill. Michael Caine would be an excellent Captain Sir Tom.
You should have got the sign-off from Hannah.
Yeah,
see what she thought.
I think he'd be brilliant at that.
Yeah, well, who did you say wanted as the young version? Tom Holland was that?
Yeah, Spider-Man.
OK, I can see that, I think.
It shows somebody very handsome. You can see actually.
Yeah, and I like the fact that English actors, very nice. Yep. Let us know what you make of that. A film, a biopic of Captain Sir Tom Moore. Will you be watching it? GB Views at gbnews.uk. But do stay with us. Still to come, we learn about how to protect ourselves from buying Russian diamonds. This is Breakfast on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I have walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 9:38. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Ellie and Martin.
And let's talk about today's biggest sports story, shall we? We can bring in Aidan McGee to tell us everything we need to know. We're starting with the football, it has to be, doesn't it?
We are. And, you know, I've got to get excited. I know I keep getting carried away, but it's the battle at the bottom. And my team, Nottingham Forest, have got the forlorn, fallen champion hopefuls, Arsenal. Could there be an upset? Could Forest get lucky today?
I don't think it's lucky. I don't think it would be lucky. I mean, at home, they're formidable. You know, they've got most of their points from the City ground.
Yep.
They haven't won an away game, although they did produced quite a good performance last week at Chelsea. They were behind twice, weren't they? And
2-2.
Came back to 2-2. But look, Arsenal are missing Martinelli, they're missing Zinchenko, they're obviously missing Saliba, who's been out for quite some time. I think they're there for the taking. I mean, it has implications for the top of the table as well, massive implications, because a win for Forest today would see Manchester City crowned Premier League titles winners for the fifth time in 6 seasons.
Yeah.
So that's quite extraordinary in itself, and then that leaves them clear to look ahead to the Champions League final against Inter Milan in a couple of weeks' time. But in terms of the bottom, I always felt in the last couple of weeks that with Southampton heading down, which obviously happened last week, I felt it was going to be 2 from the remaining 4. Everton up against Wolves today, big game for them at Molineux. And Leeds go to West Ham tomorrow. Now, there is a if Leeds don't win at West Ham tomorrow, there is a set of circumstances that could see them relegated. But West Ham, are they, again, they're in a European final themselves as well, just like Manchester City. Are they going to have an eye on that? Are they going to be on the beach? We'll see. But I think Forest get every chance today. They've taken, I think it's 7 points in the last 4 games. There's always one team at the bottom who finds form just when they need it. And it's not difficult. It's not easy, for the team that's come up from the Championship to achieve that and find form. They're normally ones who get a little bit kind of battle-weary towards the end of the season and slip back. Well, they're saying that. I think it was 1998 was the last time we saw all 3 teams come up from the Championship and then subsequently all get relegated. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be watching that 5:30 today. Huge day for Forest fans. I wish them all the best of luck. I'm not really biased on this show, but look, it's very, very rare that Forest gets some glory. So, yeah. It's not been the Premier League since 1999. As I said in the last hour, it's not easy when you've been out of the Premier League for so long. You've missed out on all those payments. You've had several aborted attempts at getting back at the Premier League. In fact, they went all the way down to League One. Yeah. And I think they only had 2 or 3 playoff attempts in that time. It's not like they've been knocking on the door. They've come back and they've had to do it from scratch. They signed 28 players last summer. It's one of the most difficult things to do in football, basically taking an entire new squad and have some players left over. Yeah.
Can we talk about the Man United takeover? Because we've been talking about the bids, haven't we, for a couple of weeks now, Aidan?
Longer than that.
But there's more interest now from Qatar.
It certainly is, yeah. I mean, it was a late bid on Tuesday night. We think it was £5 billion plus a pledge to clear the debt, which is around £1 billion. And then, even beyond that, you're talking about upgrading the stadium, which desperately needs to happen. 500 million quid, that's just going to cost to upgrade it, and that's not included. I mean, they may decide to completely knock the whole of Old Trafford down and build something new. Then there's the cost of the training ground as well. So, I mean, the stories about James Radcliffe's bid with Ineos. Yep. I did feel, my information, talking to people close to it, telling me in the last few weeks that it's always been designed at smoking the Qataris out. And that's why they bid the other night. And if you look at it, 2 or 3 of their bids gone in, it's a final offer. There were meant to be deadlines. This whole strategy, when they put the club up for sale in November, was all about creating a bidding war, and that's exactly what's happened. The price of Man United is going to go well above what the New York Stock Exchange value it at, which is about £2.5 billion. Well, it's big business and big excitement. Aidan McGee, thank you for all your insight this morning. Have a good one. Cheers.
Thank you, Aidan. Now, I believe we do have some pictures of President Zelenskyy arriving at the G7 in Hiroshima. This is just a while ago now. You can see he's in his khaki. This is what we were talking about earlier with our political reporter, Catherine Forster. This is form, isn't it, for President Zelenskyy? He is arriving at the G7 to ask for military aid from those who haven't yet pledged it. He'll be focusing on the likes of India and Japan. He does wear his military khaki T-shirt, doesn't he? He very much wants to give that impression of his country being at war. He's good at this. This is what works, doesn't it? It's this personal, persuasive power that we see from Zelenskyy.
Yeah, and he'll be hoping to go home with a lot in his back pocket. F-16 fighter jets from America, from the Netherlands, £18 million a piece, wants the full arsenal, the full money. So, look, he's on a charm offensive, and I think Ellie will probably get a result.
Yep, I think he will, and that's why he's decided to appear in person. We were talking about a video message, but no, he has arrived at the G7 summit on day 2 in Hiroshima. This is all, of course, after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And the PM, Rishi Sunak, is going to announce a ban on Russian diamonds now coming to the UK as he and the other G7 leaders are stepping up sanctions against Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, the ban is to show support to Ukraine as well as freeze the assets of £3.2 billion worth of diamond export market.
Well, we're joined now by the co-founder and jeweller of Burt & Gert Jewellery, Mark Burgess. Really good to see you, Mark, and I'm absolutely delighted to see all these diamonds as well because they are just beautiful. And I didn't realise how expensive the diamond industry was, especially Russian exports.
Yeah, I mean, like, they do provide a lot of diamonds, so it will definitely make a knock-on effect to the price of diamonds. I can see them going up.
Really? Is this something that you support as a jeweller, having the sanctions on Russian diamonds?
I haven't bought a Russian diamond for over a year. You can go through, find different suppliers, and when you're going through, you can just click on what sort of countries you want to buy from. And I've always, since the invasion...
And has that just felt for you like a moral decision?
100%. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm interested more because we've seen this before with the blood diamonds from South Africa, and now we're seeing it with Russian diamonds. But in a global market, we've seen with the oil that the Western sanctions on oil didn't work because people from India and China started buying. Will this actually have an impact, or will it just mean that other people elsewhere buy all these diamonds?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. To be honest, you don't know if they're going to be coming through different forms to come into the country. You don't know. It's really hard to know, really.
Yeah.
How difficult is it for people to trace where their diamond comes from? So let's say someone's in the market to buy an engagement ring and they don't want to get a Russian diamond because, like you, they feel morally they don't want to buy anything Russian at the moment. How would they be able to trace that diamond?
It's near enough impossible, to be fair. It's all how much you trust your jeweller. There are some new technologies coming in with blockchains and things like that where you can track where it's mined from, where it's cut and the final piece, but we're not quite there yet.
It's so interesting.
It is fascinating because, like with a watch, for example, you get your paperwork, you know, the provenance, so you can make a decision based on that. But if you buy diamonds with that provenance, then great. But there's no way of checking and being able to see if you like the DNA of a diamond.
No,
is there?
because they're exactly the same all over the world. So you do have the certificates with diamonds, but they don't always have the origin on there.
Yeah.
So ideally, if the diamond industry can just step up a bit and put the origin on the certificates, I think a lot of us will feel a bit more comfortable about it.
Is that something that you would call for?
I would definitely, 100%. Yeah.
So I suppose the best advice for somebody is to look for something that's conflict-free.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, most diamonds are. Okay. So when you buy the certificate, it will be conflict-free. But tracing, now we've got this new issue with Ukraine, it is difficult.
Can you talk us through a few of the gems that you have in front of you there? You got, I mean, Ellie,
Can I have the big
beside
one?
yourself.
I just had the best diamond. So do we know where this one is from?
I think that one is from Canada, that one.
Oh, it's stunning. Yeah. Really, really, really nice. I mean, does this... can we see that? It really suits me, it must be said. Will we see the price of diamonds go up considerably now, you think, if we're taking out the Russian...
It's a hard one to call. I'm not sure, but I do think they will be going up a bit, definitely.
Yeah, you can imagine, can't you?
What else have we got there? Because a lot of diamonds, of course, come in a lot of different colours. The clearest ones are the most valuable, but there's some beautiful rose ones.
I like this one. This is a nice yellow diamond. Do we know where this one's from? That
South Africa, that one.
South Africa, this one. Where do most diamonds come from?
A lot of them do come from Canada.
OK.
Yeah.
And like, why is that? Because, I mean, I've always thought this is like a hot country thing. But I guess geologically, millennia ago when they were formed, that was all under places like Canada and Alaska and that too.
Yeah, that's it.
And it's the same with Russia, of course.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Oh, we're literally having the best time. And this is a necklace that you made for your wife, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Does she know this? Or have I just
I borrowed it off her this morning.
OK, well, there you go then. And where is this diamond?
That's Canada.
That's Canada. Yeah. So you would specialise mainly in Canadian diamonds, is that fair to say?
It all depends on, because I like to suit the best for the customer. So whatever the best price is on the market, we'll go for that, really.
And if you're not able to check the provenance through the actual crystallography, as it were, is there a way specifically, for example, that the Russians may cut their diamonds? Do they have a trademark?
No, it's all the same.
You can't even tell them that way.
You can't tell. You really can't tell.
So would your advice be to somebody who is looking to buy jewellery in London to go with jewellers that perhaps feel the same way that you do?
Yeah, definitely.
And to build up that relationship of trust as to where that diamond comes from?
Yeah, I think my advice would be to go for the smaller independent jewellers, because then they can show you on their screens what stones we're looking at and get a few in just for you to have a look at, and then you can see on the screen the origin.
Yeah, no, really, really good advice, Mark. Thank you so much for
My
your
pleasure.
time. Really, really good to see you this morning. Faye, our director, is saying she really likes this one.
Okay.
I think you're going to have
Might
some
lose it on the
sales
way
in
out.
this
Yeah, mate,
news.
holding your finger there, Ellie. That's
There you go.
just you want to watch out. I think you might be slipping that in your pocket there, Ellie. I think
No, I like
Quite,
this big one here. How many carats is that? Just to...
Oh, that's definitely over 2 carats.
Yeah, so yeah, the classic. Always go for the most expensive option. It's the same with everything. Anyway, Mark, really, really good to see
Thanks
you.
for having me.
Really good practical advice as well for people who are looking to buy a diamond, especially in a time of sanctions. Thank you very much, Mark.
That's great. OK, do we have any more views to go
We
through?
do,
Chris?
yes. We've been talking about this great story today. It's really had legs, or you could say wings.
Yeah.
It's about seagulls, and apparently seagulls on the southern coast are the most bold, the most brazen when it comes to stealing chips and ice creams and anything of the like.
Yeah.
And lots of you have been getting in touch this morning with your stories about seagulls.
It's been very, very funny, but this is an actual academic study. So it was Plymouth University and Glasgow University, and they got people a thing called gull's eye, see what they did there, not bullseye, to make a record of how close seagulls were getting to them, and it was like 38 feet, Bournemouth over 200 feet in the Highlands of Scotland, so bold as brass down south, and that prompted an avalanche of stories. It has to be said, Ali, some very, very funny moments.
We've really enjoyed your theatrical... I'm worried I've stolen a ring now, Mark. I keep checking my hands. Lots of theatrical stories that you've been sending in. We've loved them today. But Mark, in sunny Manchester, and I'm glad it is sunny for you, Mark, has said the seagulls aren't the only bird with this reputation. On a recent trip to Perth in Western Australia, we found ourselves sat outside at an idyllic beauty spot, and the pesky parrots with their lovely green and red feathers swooped in on our chips and burgers, and the sign on the wall said, "Do not feed the parrots." They had helped themselves already.
And it's funny how we started on seagulls, Ellie. It went on to red kites.
Yeah.
And now it's on parrots. It seems like Alfred Hitchcock. Now, they've all got a taste for chips. They've all got a taste for human food. And that's what happens when we cohabit with animals. Then we're going for our suppers.
They're violent, aren't they? Do your impression of Tony Maguire, our Scottish reporter. We asked him if it was an issue up in Fife, and this is what he said.
So basically, we just threw it to him live on air. He was doing from a farmer's show. And we said, yeah, but what about the seagulls? Do they swoop in? And he went, it's part and parcel of being a seagull. Which I thought was the most wonderful sort of, ad-lib moment. He was able to pivot seamlessly from talking about show-winning, prize-winning cows and bullocks straight into seagull attacks.
The highlight of the show for us. It was absolutely brilliant. Lots of you getting in touch on the pocket money debate that we had a little bit earlier on. Basically, should you be giving children pocket money every week, or should they be working for their own money? Well, Patrick from Buckingham has been in touch and says, at the age of 10, I was told I would need to work to earn pocket money. My mum was a bookkeeper for a large co-op store near school. They needed someone in the workhouse at the back of the store to make up customer orders for delivery. You had to be 14 to deliver on a bike with a big basket on the front. 5 afternoons after school, I worked, and 1 whole Sunday helping the van delivery to other small towns and villages. I started at 7 p.m. through to 7 a.m. I was just 12 years old. I mean, some of you have just worked so hard.
But it makes you wonder what's happened to the Saturday job. So my auntie Celia used to own a lace factory in Nottingham, and I was working on a Saturday when I was 13. I used to get £5 for half a day, and I saved up all my money for my first motorbike. I didn't need pocket money at the time. My mum more said, well, no, you're not getting any pocket money. By the time I was like 13, 14. And I think it's a good life lesson. I think kids now are doing less part-time work. They're more mollycoddled. They're more spoon-fed. I think we are creating a softer generation. So maybe a bit of tough love is what kids need, Ali.
Yeah. Marion says, I pay my granddaughter, who we're bringing up, £50 every fortnight if her school marks are above 50% for achievement. That's a really good way of doing it. And Ray from Stockton-on-Tees says, I give my grandson £20 per week in pocket money. He's 30 years old. I'm going to increase it to £30 due to the cost of living crisis. Well, thank you so much, all of you, for getting in touch today. That's it from us today, but do stay tuned because Esther and Phil are here with Saturday morning, and Stephen returns with me tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. But until then, goodbye and have a lovely Saturday.
Thank you.
Hello, over. Good morning to you. It's a sunny start to the day for England and Wales. And we keep warm sunny spells into the afternoon. Cloudier for Scotland and Northern Ireland. And here the weather a bit more mixed this weekend with some rain at times. The reason being High pressure extends all the way from the Azores all the way to Scandinavia. This area of high pressure keeps things settled in many places, but some weather fronts will approach from the northwest and they'll weaken, but they'll also bring areas of cloud and outbreaks of rain at times. A few light outbreaks of rain clearing through Northern Ireland, eastern parts of Scotland first thing, a damp start for Shetland, for example. Then brighter skies emerge for central and northern Scotland. Temperatures here rising as a result, 19 or 20 Celsius for the Moray coast, and also bright for the southeast of Scotland. But the sunniest skies are expected across England and Wales, 22 Celsius in places. However, there will be this cooler onshore breeze for North Sea coasts. Then into the evening, we keep the clear skies across England and Wales, and as a result, temperatures will fall. Another cool night is expected. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, extensive low cloud and mistiness around the west will move east overnight, bringing some persistent spells of rain. Now, for the far south and southeast of Scotland, it stays largely dry, but elsewhere it's damp and it's cloudy and it's mild as we begin Sunday. England and Wales, meanwhile, a cool start, but a bright blue skies start once again, and temperatures will soon rise as a result. Chance of some low cloud around some of these North Sea coasts, and chance of some cloud building across central and southern parts of England through the day. But otherwise, a fine spring day expected once again, high teens, low 20s. Scotland and Northern Ireland, grey, misty skies first thing, rainfall tending to ease later and turning brighter in the far north and northwest as well. But by Monday and Tuesday, fine and dry with plenty of warm sunshine across the UK, with that high pressure developing much more widely once again.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I have walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting